All right, we should be live now. Let's just give it a few seconds to make sure nothing's broken.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
yeah, it looks like we are good to go. So yeah, I just want to right off the bat thank Heterodox uh, Agnostic 8070 for the 20 knock, whatever the hell that currency is. Who is saying debate Feingeist. Sir underscore jacket is the username. I mean, yeah, tell them to get in touch with me, and then I suppose they can debate me. If they've done live debates before, then it's fine. If they haven't done any live debates before, they've got no portfolio. I've stopped doing those, unfortunately, because a couple of them have ended up being just very bad content. Like the person came in without really having anything, and it just wasn't good quality. But yeah, so anyway, this is the Remnant episode 2 now. Thank you everyone for coming. Now there were, a couple of things which happened this week. Yeah, so I suppose Monhop, do you want to, before we get into any of that, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's Monhop here, guys. Obviously, the host, I guess, the manager of this podcast slash space. I'm not really sure quite what to call it. I mean, I guess it is a podcast for anyone that's like listening back or like on the platform or listening on YouTube. But obviously, the design here is to get people involved. So, as I said in Zulu's Discord about half an hour ago. Best way to be involved in this is to join on X. And a lot of people maybe don't even have an X account, or don't really like using spaces. I totally understand that. But if you are interested in joining up and being part of the conversation, then again, the easiest way to do it is on X, of course. As you would have seen before, Zulu also will read out any super chats, because if you're donating money to the cause, then that's the least we can do, I guess. So yeah, thanks to everyone that's tuning in. Obviously, hopefully we'll get some more people rolling in to the space or to onto the live stream. Let me start off with this, because as you said, and as I said in kind of my post about this upcoming space, there's been a few things that have happened since we last hosted the Remnant episode 1 2 weeks ago. Chief among them being your debate with Dave Smith. So, I mean, look, obviously you've talked about it a little bit since then, but I suppose just a little while on now from it. How are you feeling about not just the debate itself, but how everything has kind of transpired since then, I suppose?
Yeah, no. So I think for the debate itself, I definitely won that debate. I mean, Dave pretty much outright said that he had no arguments against what I was saying. He had no arguments on the flow. Now, I know that Jacob Winograd did like a post-mortem, I believe last night, where I watched that and he was saying that, well, the negative of the proposition doesn't actually have to prove anything. Which, like, in isolation, that's true. But the thing is that I actually gave the positive case for the proposition, and Dave didn't have any counter arguments. That's the point, is that I had given the positive case, and Dave didn't have any counter arguments to that. So that's why he fundamentally lost the debate. Now, definitely, I should have been more aggressive, and I think I've narrowed down what it was that caused me not to be aggressive enough. And it was the fact that I wasn't drinking during that debate. Like, because I looked at various debates where I haven't been as aggressive. The Kinsella debate was another one where I wasn't particularly aggressive during it. And the commonality is that I didn't drink during it. The Kinsella one I didn't drink because it was really early on the day. Like, it wasn't like a Friday night debate, which is normally what I do. And for the Dave one, I just didn't drink because I was like, oh, I want to be as sharp as possible. But as it turns out, the alcohol does indeed lower your social inhibitions. It allows you to interrupt more. Because I was thinking, like, well, did I not prepare enough on this thing and the other thing? But, like, as I was looking over it, it's like, no, I I have prepared on all these things. I do know how to answer all these things. I just wasn't interrupting because I wasn't tipsy at all. So that would be my takeaway for this debate. If I have another one like it, then I'm definitely going to get a little bit tipsy first. And then I'll probably be more aggressive. But I still do think that I won the debate. And, anybody, Dave was saying the other day that, like, he had completely, like, he landed blows, I believe was his word. He landed many blows against me, but I didn't land any blows against him. And it's like, okay, well, which specific blows did Dave land against me? I see zero. As far as the flow is concerned, I see zero blows that Dave landed against me. He maybe convinced the audience that I was a crazy person, which is like, okay, well, they already believed that. Who cares? Who gives a shit? But did he really land any blows argumentatively? Zero, as far as I'm concerned. Zero landed. And anybody can dispute that by just looking at the flow, looking at the proposition, look at the resolution of the debate, and show what it was that Dave proved that I was wrong on. Show which part of the resolution that Dave proved. Because there are multiple parts in that resolution. Which one did Dave prove to be correct? That's all I want.
Right. And so a couple of things there. So on your point about, negative versus affirmative, who has to prove what, I agree that, yeah, in the first instance, as you said, like it's the job of the positive, the person making a positive case to substantiate some kind of argument. But think about it this way: if you've ever witnessed a court case or a trial or followed one, you'll notice that just because it's always, literally always, the job of the prosecution to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Like there is no point where the burden of evidence, the burden of proof shifts to the defense. That doesn't mean the defense doesn't provide rebuttal witnesses or offer their own counter arguments. They don't just sit there and go nah whenever the prosecution brings up a piece of evidence. They cross-examine. They bring their own rebuttal witnesses. They bring their own witnesses that provide an alternative explanation to what the prosecution is providing. That is your job. So, and a debate isn't even like that per se. It's not like a situation where it's explicitly outlined that, hey, at all times, at all stages, the burden of proof is on the prosecution or on the positive case, to use the debate terminology. Once you or anyone else making the positive case has established some argument on the flow, it is now the job of the negative or the person denying the proposition to respond to that and give evidence and an explanation for why that is false. That is absolutely your job in a debate if you are, negating a resolution. So that would be one point. Second point is to the specific debate or how it played out. Look, I've had a lot of people now, which has been, I'll give him credit. That's quite cool, actually. It's cool that he has started, engaging on the platform with me. I think that's, I appreciate that. I think it's cool that he is engaging. I still think he's not getting as deep into the philosophy as I would like him to, as far as like actually engaging with what I'm asking him. But it's better than what he was doing previously, which is like literally had me blocked. So that's progress, I suppose. But look, I've had so many people in my replies, because obviously Dave responds and then all his followers see it, so he will start replying to me, being like, oh, Zulu owned that, Dave owned that debate. Zulu had nothing, he got completely destroyed or whatever. And look, I just asked them, okay, what point do you think Dave Smith established? Like what argument from the debate were you like, yep, Dave won on that, that's why he won the debate? I haven't actually gotten an answer yet. Not one. A lot of the people just don't reply to me. And those that do just go, like, I literally had a guy go, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say everything. It's like, well, okay, What does that mean exactly? Like, that's not really giving me much as far as like actual evidence for your claim. Anyway, so with that, I'm going to start reading some of the comments that
Just
have
real quick.
come through. Oh, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. I do have to say that Brink Will 84.89 for $50, that's a lot of money. Thank you very much. He says, you changed me from a classical libertarian into an ANCAP. I love you like Ayn Rand loved man. Zal Zulu. Well, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to kind of push the needle towards, because, for the longest time, people just really haven't been thinking. I don't want to say thinking critically, because people accuse me of being a Kantian again, but really thinking precisely about this philosophy. It hasn't been promulgating out to the masses about how to actually do philosophy, and it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful field, philosophy, and it's not that the mass of people in this movement can't understand the philosophy. It's up until now, it's really been, at least as far as our movement is concerned, kind of held away in these tomes. And it's like, okay, now we have to have people who are translating these tomes and making easier, watered down versions of these tomes, which I think is completely wrong. We have to be putting our best foot forward, and our best foot is the philosophy. We have to be really hardcore on the philosophy. Just present the arguments. Just present them. 99% of people will go, fuck off, go away. Don't care about those people. They don't matter. They literally do not matter. All that matters is that we get that philosophical argument in front of people. Yeah, that's the end of that thought. But Odd Nova, whilst I was saying it, did donate $5. Thank you very much. Being more aggressive would have appealed to the wrong people among Dave's audience. The restraint was a win for Isaiah Zalzulu. Well, so I do disagree. I do think that I should have been more aggressive. Namely, I should have interrupted more, because Dave would go on all these long rambles. I'd have these points coming up in my head, but I just wouldn't interrupt, because I was like, okay, my thought process at the time was, I'll let him finish, what he's trying to say, but he really wasn't saying much of anything. So I really should have interrupted there. I really should have interjected and be like, or even, this was a tip Casimir gave me. Even just let him finish and go, okay, well, that was great, but you didn't answer my question, and then move on, because then that at least puts in explicitly to the audience, they understand that he isn't actually answering my questions. Whereas I was just I wasn't being blood sportsy enough in that debate. And that was my own fault. I should have been more blood sportsy. And I will accept that 10 times out of 10. And I think I've got a valid cause for, namely, that I didn't have a sip of alcohol. If I had, then I would have been more aggressive.
Yeah, look, quickly on your point about spreading the philosophy, look, let's think about, and then I promise we'll get to the hands. I know there's people waiting to speak, and I want to get to you all because I really appreciate people that come on and want to, contribute. But real quick on this, when I started, or when I joined libertarian philosophy, and when I started getting into it, and this was only a few years ago, like not that long ago. Just before you kind of started your channel, soon after I kind of got into the movement. Even at that stage, the opportunity cost involved in getting well read and knowledgeable on libertarianism was super high. Like I had to buy all these books from the Mises Institute or from like other platforms like Ethics of Liberty, Rothbard, all that kind of stuff, a few others, fucking Human Action by Mises. Like, first of all, the books are fucking expensive. All right, that's the first point. So straight away, there's like do I actually care enough about about this philosophy to spend multiple hundreds of dollars on books? Spend multiple hundreds of dollars on books. And then second of all, like actually, wait for them to arrive and then read the fucking things. It takes a really long time to read through like some of these, more complex and, longer tomes on Austrian economics or libertarian philosophy. So, and that again, this is only like a few years ago. It's not like I was getting into libertarianism in the 2000s or the 90s, where it was even more difficult because you basically would never have heard of the philosophy if you weren't introduced to it somehow, some way. Like you didn't happen upon it. I basically discovered anarcho-capitalism because of of the political compass. Like I found out I was like roughly in like the lib right section, and then I looked up, okay, well, what's the most extreme lib right guys? I was like ANCAP. Okay, what the hell is that? And then that's how I got my start. Like that wouldn't have happened without the internet, but. So yeah, I think you're doing a great thing as far as spreading the philosophy. The opportunity cost between compared to what it used to be to become moderately well read on the basics of the philosophy is significantly less than it used to be. So I think that's undeniably a good thing. Okay, let me get to
Real quick,
a
I
few
do,
of
I
these
do have
hands.
to
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, of course.
interject with another donation for $2. Thank you very much, AC Sansone55. Have you considered debating humor? Yeah, sure. I've got a lot of people I need to debate, so I'm like working at resolutions for them, and I'll kind of just rapid fire get them out. I will be talking to, oh fuck, what was his goddamn name? What was his goddamn name? He's like a big guy, in like in libertarianism, and like I think he accepts some objectives philosophy. Sheldon Richby, talking to him next Friday. We've scheduled the time. We just gotta work out the logistics there. But I will be talking to him next Friday. Thank you very much, Man Sharma, who kind of arranged that whole thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good. It's good. It'll be good to see you like more on the debate track again, because that's obviously how you kind of developed your audience, right? And look, the videos are obviously incredible, and I love them, and they're my favorite part of your channel. But it's always good to see you actually debating people. That's always really, really fun. Let me from now on, once I've like finished monologuing, I'm actually going to just ask you if you have any super chats, rather than making you interject.
Yeah.
So let me go to you can always change your mind first, and then we'll hit up the other two hands. So thanks for jumping on. Thanks for jumping on, I should say. My friend, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I think Tottenham Forum was first, but I'll take it.
We'll just whenever I call the hands, we'll just go in the rough order. I promise we will get to everyone, so that's all good.
Cool. I'll just say Mises books, as far as I know, they are free. You can find them on like online. They are free. I'm pretty sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I have seen a lot of them free. But I'm just going to ask Zulu. Were you like tipsy on the Acorn debate?
A little bit, but it was mostly. I was trying to like change up my entire sleep schedule there. Like I was just completely, I was not in the right frame of mind. Honestly, like Acorn asked me before that debate, like, is it still good for you? Should we reschedule? And I should have just rescheduled. That was wrong of me to kind of, put him in that position if nothing else. But we will probably get a redo on that one, because he's a smart guy. I think he's got good things to say.
Cool. Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Awesome, man. No worries. Thanks for jumping up, and thanks for being part of the space. We'll go to Will May next, and then we'll hit up Founder Forum. So, Will, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Liquid Zulu and Mono Hopian, Monarcho Hop. My point that I wanted to bring up in terms of what Dave brought up on the debate, in which how he won was, I would say, it was by just trying to point out certain absurdities in which an idea can become consequentially more impractical than others. So I'll give you an example. Let's suppose there's a baby locked in a hot car. Would it be wrong for bystanders to break open the window to rescue the baby that's trapped in a car?
Okay, so real quick, you're saying that he won on the point that the principle becomes more impractical than not following the principle. Hold on. I would say that. I would just say that practical there. What that really means in terms of philosophy is that it doesn't work. What does it mean to work? It means that it doesn't satisfy your whims. So that I just throw out that whole framing. So for the baby locked in the car, well, that's actually forestalling. if they're trying to prevent you from getting to that baby, they're forestalling that guardianship from you. And actually, Nye, who's another speaker on this panel, can speak to this very heavily because he actually wrote the paper which elucidated this theory first before anybody else, namely the theory of guardianship. So they're erecting this barrier around the baby. You're allowed to break down that barrier to get to that baby to save them, okay? Because they can't forestall guardianship from you. So that reductio doesn't actually... and this is the thing I tried to get across in the debate with Dave, is that he literally thought that it was just going to be me biting a million bullets. I'll just bite any bullet. No, it actually has to be a valid bullet first. It has to be a valid bullet. It has to actually be, okay, from your theory, this thing follows. I think that it follows from my theory that you have to let that baby die. And there were many examples in the debate that I brought up where I don't think it follows from the theory that you have to necessarily let everybody on Earth die from the Martians. Because again, this is why I brought up the bank teller example it's not actually clear that the Martians are indeed that you're able to steal the penny in the first place. Yes, if it's theft, if it's literally aggression, and you're defining that into the scenario, then you're just asking, does the NEP have exceptions? And the correct answer is no, it doesn't have exceptions, because that's what makes it a principle. Okay? But if you actually elucidate these scenarios, it becomes a lot more clear. It's like, okay, well, is this actually in violation to the principle? I don't think so. That's why I was saying with the whole person with the ladder. It's like, hey, if in 10 minutes your house is burning down and your grandmother is in that room over there, you're not allowed to take this ladder. And you turn around and sure enough, the house is burning down and your grandmother is in that room. It's like, okay, clearly this guy's an arsonist and he is burning down your house. So the correct answer is to shoot him in the chest until he's no longer consisting of life, and then take his ladder from him, and then save your grandmother.
Will, did you want to come back on any of that? You're more than welcome to.
Yes, quite a few different things. I would say duress wouldn't be a decent excuse, or else it wouldn't have been wrong to have, let's say, executed Benedict Arnold. Or let's suppose this.
So to be clear, I don't know about the execution of Benedict Arnold is. I don't know anything about that. So please give me a hypothetical or something.
Let's suppose
he never was executed.
So this is one area where I might half agree, but also at the same time I might disagree in a way. Let's suppose, all right, the feds are pressuring someone to snitch on some of their homies or whatnot, and they weren't engaging in any sort of violent crime that was hurting anyone. I would say it would be wrong to rat your own guys out. And just from a sheer moralistic standpoint, that being said, despite the fact that you are under duress, and just in terms of consequential harm that you're doing to an individual, so that would be up.
So I suppose I'll leak here then, because it has become relevant. Apologies to the collaborators if this is too premature, but I think it becomes relevant now because I can't, hold back on revealing the principle when it becomes relevant to reveal it, and I can justify that later if need be. So, and this is actually relates to ANCAP pamphlets asking any info on Zulu's new principle. So this is the principle here. I'm going to reveal it here for the first time publicly. Namely, I have a specific theory about when it becomes duress, in Will's terms. Specifically, when does it become that the bank teller isn't culpable anymore for giving up the money? So, if we look at the bank teller example, it's a guy comes into the bank and he holds up a gun to the bank teller's head. And he says, hey, empty the cash drawer and give me all the cash. Okay, now that seems quite clear that it's the robber who is doing that theft of the cash. It's not the bank teller taking out the cash and giving it to this guy. It seems clear that she's not committing the theft. But what is the reduction there? This is how we come to legal principles, by the way. Through thinking through these examples. We think through these specific cases and think, okay, well, how do our principles apply to this? We do it inductively, right? So we look at this case. We think about, well, what would the reductio be? Because what would the naive response to this be? It's that the bank teller isn't responsible if she's under threat. If she's being aggressed against, then she's no longer culpable. It's like, okay, well, we can come up with reductios against that. We can say, well, what if the guy instead, he came into the bank and said, hey, if you don't give me all that money in the cash drawer, I'm gonna place my left pinky on your shoulder for just a second, and then I'll take it away. And it's like, okay, well, that isn't aggression, right? That's assault. But that seems a lot less clear. Like, why do we... But maybe we do have to bite that bullet. Maybe that is a bullet we have to bite. But what I came to is, I think, a correct principle here. A correct distinction. Because the kind of canned response here would be, well, this is just a continuum problem. But okay, that's not sufficient. Because a continuum problem, you have to have a principal difference between one end of the continuum and the other end. Like for David Friedman's example of firing a 10 gigawatt laser at someone's house, well, that's clearly aggression because you're destroying their house, versus firing a single photon at their house. Right? There is the difference there is that one initiates a conflict and one doesn't. So that's how you get to the difference. There has to be a principal difference between each end of the continuum. Okay? So for the bank teller, what I think the principal difference is that it's whether or not the teller's exclusion of the means can actually continue if the threat is followed through on. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Let's say the guy follows through on his threat of placing a pinky on her shoulder. Well, she can continue to exclude him from the money. Right? She can just continue doing that if he follows through on that threat. Whereas, if he shoots her in the head, she can no longer continue doing that. Because she's just dead at that point. Like, she can't continue... Hold on. She can't continue to follow through on her exclusion if he does indeed carry out that threat. And this is the bank teller principle, and I think that is the literal distinction between the two cases. And we're currently working out, can this be turned into socialism somehow? Is this valid somehow? And I will let you come back in, Will, in a second, but I do have to read out some super chats which have been piling up. So apologies for that. But just keep that in mind. So there's Nuclear Mayhem 9238 for 100 knock. We got another knock guy in here. How exactly are you supposed to argue against people who refuse to own the consequences of their belief? They'll say the ends justify the means, but not any principles for which means and ends are justified. So yeah, you basically just elaborate upon that. You basically just say, well, okay, well then you're just operating on whim at that point. You believe this thing which implies this other thing, and you don't like that other thing, but implication holds. The implication holds, right? So you just hold their nose into that implication and just keep hammering them with it and just say, hey, you're contradicting yourself. That's the basic framework for how you do that. And then August Leo for another $50. Thank you very much. That's a lot of money. Thank you very much. I'm annoyed that Dave didn't answer my question about higher values with anything substantial. But even from his religious values, it should be an easy bullet to bite. Don't steal even at great cost to yourself. And now go buy a real drink, Zal Zulu. Well, thank you very much. Indeed, and like, this is the point that I believe some people were making in the wake of the debate about how the Christian martyrs, like, is being a martyr properly Christian? Well, you know, if you disagree with NEP absolutists, you have to disregard the martyrs, because they only have to say a few words. They only just have to say that they disavow God or whatever it is, and then their family can go free. It's fine, right? But like, you know, the Christians can understand why that is bad, but suddenly when it comes to my viewpoint, they're like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? But yeah, that is the end of it. So, apologies, Will. I think you should be able to come back in on that.
Thank you, Liquid Zulu. So, another preposition I had in terms of like, well, there's two different areas where I kind of disagree with you. Was going to be the do what thou as thou will is going to like somehow contradict, let's say, freedom in general, because like do what thou will, essentially, like, that is what freedom is. It's like you're free to do whatever you want. So,
Okay, well,
and whereas let's
hold on.
suppose,
We'll take that as the last thing for now, and you can re-raise your hand, I suppose. So do what thou wilt. That is the kind of whim worshipper's definition of freedom. That is the Sternright understanding. And apologies to Jose Allison, who just came in. I just saw him. I'm going to shit on Sterner a little bit here. Do what thou wilt means just anything goes. Just who cares? Jungle ethics, might makes right. Right? This is not what, and I don't actually use the term freedom in my theory here. I use liberty, right? This is opposed to liberty because I have a liberty to not be aggressed against. I have the right not to be aggressed against. And just do what thou wilt means that you can aggress against me. So I completely reject that. But, Will, you can come in again later if you want to continue this, but we should get to other hands. But before that, Heterodox Agnostic did give another 20 knock, saying, by the way, he's in this call. I won't necessarily dox if he doesn't want me to dox. I love thinking about this new principle, think XP. Well, thank you very much for the money.
NOK, by the way, for anyone that's curious, is Norwegian currency. So we're getting the Scandies involved, which is cool. Real
Yeah,
quick,
is it
'cause I wanted to
kroner?
jump
Is it
in.
Norwegian kroner or something?
Yeah, it's Krone,
Crowns.
Krone. I don't know how it's pronounced, but
Kono.
oh yeah, go ahead. You can always change your mind. You have a fucking annoying name to read out, I have to admit. But if you want to jump in real quick, please go ahead.
I would just say it's Kroner. I didn't have my hand up, so I just.
Oh, okay, all good. No worries. Yeah, so real quick, because I think that this is an important thing to touch on. What Zulu was talking about there, the establishment of a new legal principle, which is really awesome, by the way. It's always good when we have these potential developments in the philosophy. As you said, it's still yet to be fully ironed out, but we're getting closer, which is awesome. Yeah, so, and this is one of the points that I think is important to bring up as far as like this ongoing kind of battle between like our camp and the Dave Smith camp. I don't know exactly what to call them, but I mean, I guess the neo-prags we can go with for now, is like when we're confronted, and I think Fabian's actually brought up this point, and he was the one that kind of explained it the best when I heard him do it on a stream. Was like, look, when you come across it, and he may have not originated this, so I don't want to like give false credit, but it's just where I heard it. When you are confronted with a scenario like a reductio, and the reductio seems to imply that you would have to accept, if you adopt your principle, you would have to accept some like absolutely abhorrent or terrible thing happening. So obviously we've all been confronted with the ones recently around the non-aggression principle, and how if stealing a penny to save the world, like, should you do it, that sort of thing. So when you're confronted with these hypotheticals, the thing not to do is to just throw your hands up and be like, oh, well, I guess just principles don't apply here. Just do what thou wilt, and just, figure out, and just aggress in order to resolve this. First of all, you should check your premises. Okay, so check your premises and be like, hey, so is the principle actually true? Because it could be possible, hey, maybe we got it wrong. Maybe the NAP is just false. But if the NAP is false, then you shouldn't be a fucking libertarian. So that's the first point. But yeah, check your premises. But look, I've been confronted with so many reductios and so many counter arguments at this point, and I've reinterrogated my premises so many times that at this point, unless someone comes up with something to me to refute the non-aggression principle, I'm just going to stand by it. So the next question to ask is, okay, as Zulu said, is this a genuine bullet bite? Is this a scenario where we just have to be like, yeah, look, the reality is you can't really do anything about this? And so an example I would give, well, this actually might be an example you don't necessarily have to bite the bullet on, and I'll explain why in a second. But look, people can do drugs if they want. Okay, that's just a part of the NAP. Is as much as a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people want to outlaw drugs. The reality is that under the non-aggression principle, under libertarian ethics, if someone wants to shoot up heroin, that's their right. But you don't have to per se accept that you just have to put up with people doing whatever they want that's compliant with non-aggression principle, because the next part of it is, okay, we have our principle and we've interrogated the premises and we still believe it to be true. Okay, how can we reconcile the principle without abandoning it and without abrogating it, um, and yet, avoid this disastrous consequence? And so this is where, Zulu's, in this scenario with the bank teller, has come up with, well, is it actually the case that the principle implies that either the bank teller can just hand over the money in the case of the slightest aggression possible, or is it the case that they can't hand it over in any scenario without aggressing, and then they just have to be shot in the head if the bank robber wants to do that? And the answer seems to be, well, in the former case, yes. In the latter case, no. And we can establish that through the principle. So, yes, it is entirely possible that when you are confronted with a reductio, that the cognitive dissonance is the way that Fabian put it. The cognitive dissonance could be pointing you at some kind of new principle or new derivation of the principle. That's entirely possible. And that's why you don't just engage in these thought terminating cliches where it's just like, well, it's just self-evident that, in these hypotheticals, you have to violate the non-aggression principle. That's not the case. And it's not clear at all that it's either, bite the bullet, you have to accept the world blowing up, or the bank teller being shot in the head. It's not clear. That's not clear at all. So, actually do the philosophical work of interrogating your premises and figuring out the philosophy further. That's how this stuff gets done. People are confronted with scenarios that they have. That's how they develop new principles. Zula, did you have any super chats to read out, or I'll go to the next hand?
Yeah, we've got a Nuclear Mayhem 9238 for 20 knock. He's saying, knock gang strikes again. You must interrupt the chat. There we go. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go to Fountainhead Forum because he has been waiting for some time and been here since the start. So Fountainhead, thanks very much for coming on once again. I suppose, I don't know if I can call someone a regular of the Remnant when we've had 2 episodes, but he has been in both at the start, so that's really cool. But yeah, please go ahead.
Hey, Monhop, I'd love to have you on my show sometime. I didn't realize you lived in Israel. I've got to say, after listening to some of these debates, I wish there was like a referee who would just blow the whistle every time there's a logical fallacy, because it gets annoying. I mean, I was listening to Dave talk about Bill Maher a few days ago, and he was talking about, well, Bill Maher doesn't have any kids. And this seems to be part of Dave's shtick, is if you don't have kids, your opinions are wrong, which is kind of silly, I guess. Well, he doesn't apply to Nick Fuentes, who he seems to have a man crush on, but
Well, it's not silly, it's
there seems
goofy.
to be, yeah. I mean, I won't, certainly there are experiences in life that give you perspectives on things that you didn't have before that, but that doesn't mean, your opinions aren't valid. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's been kind of a, I don't enjoy watching these debates anymore because there's just so many fallacies that people commit.
Did you have anything else, or you good?
Not really, but I do think Zulu is trying to save objectivism. And I would say, Dave, the branding of objectivism is destroyed now. And I can tell you, I first read Rand in '92. It was not like this in the '90s at all. I mean, they hardly talked about Israel at all. It was after the attacks on the World Trade Center, the movement went to hell. It really did. It's I guess not really, and it really, Zulu, I'd like you to do a takedown on Zionism, because really objectivists should be the unlikeliest Zionists in history. It's really weird, if you ask me, that these people who claim to be dedicated to a life of reason and the Enlightenment, yet somehow, because Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, that it's the most absurd thing. It's one of the most absurd things in the world, if you ask me.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's all I got to say.
Well, first of all, I'll just clarify for anyone listening. The reason why you said I was Israeli is because I was getting into a back and forth with Dave on X, and I basically I compared his stance on the non-aggression principle, and I said, well, look, it seems like you, and I would, again, rightfully, by the way, he's correct to do this. You hold the people of Israel to an NAP absolutist standard as far as their, actions towards the Palestinians, and that is quite right for you to do. Absolutely, you should be holding to your principles on that situation. But it seems like his stance as far as his own actions or the actions of people around him is like, well, if your children are in danger, then you can abrogate your principles and kind of do whatever you need to do, whatever you feel you need to do in order to protect your children. And I was like, well, if you hold that standard for the Israelis, then they could easily argue, hey, look, if we were to stop occupying Gaza, Hamas or, even just Palestinians in general, like the more militant ones, might come out and start attacking our children because they feel some kind of, collective anger towards us as a people for the actions of the past. I think that's that would be a reasonable thing for an Israeli person to say, is that they could potentially be attacked. And it seems like if Dave was holding to his principle, or his lack of principle, I should say, that would be a perfectly valid thing for them to do, is be like, hey, look, we can't reduce our aggression just now. Like, look at all the terrible things that could happen. So that would be kind of that's where me. So, and then I just directly said to him, he said something, and then I said, yeah, and I'm an Israeli father who wants to continue occupying Gaza, and that makes me a consistent libertarian. So that's where that came from.
And
yeah,
moreover, with this thing, like, what did Dave say with respect to the US border? He said he wants to take the entire fucking military and put it on our border and secure our border. Now, one thing I pointed out in the video is, what is the IDF doing? What does the IDF do? Can you just mute yourself real quick, Fernand Forum?
Yeah, I'm just gonna. He keeps unmuting himself. I'm just gonna mute him. Founder, can you please just keep the mic muted until you come up? We'll let you jump back in real quick. We just want to keep the mic muted so the audio is clear.
Yeah. So what he says, he wants to take the entire fucking military and put it on our border and secure our border. That's what he says with respect to the US border. What does the IDF do? Well, the IDF, they are taking the entire Israeli military and putting it on their border and securing what? Their border claims, right? They claim Palestine. They claim the West Bank. They claim all these things, right? Those are their border claims. And they're securing those border claims with their entire fucking military. So Dave Smith is advocating that we adopt the Israeli policy in the US. Okay, well, there's something going on there, when Dave Smith is constantly, in every fucking podcast I see of him, I won't say that, actually, because he does a lot of podcasts and other things. That was unfair. But on a lot of his recent success has been from saying how bad the IDF is being and how immoral they're being and everything like that. Well, it's like, you want that times 1,000,000. Look how much bigger the US military is than the IDF. When, most of the IDF budget comes from fucking US funding, right? Imagine that massively scaled up in every city in the last bastion of capitalism on planet Earth. And I'll keep saying that because that's really what the US is. Like, I've been there a few times now, and it really is just stark how much wealthier they are than anywhere else on planet Earth. Like, there's so much wealthier over there, just in general. Just everything about them is just way wealthier. And he wants to destroy all of that. And where did all this wealth come from? It came from their capitalism, right? He's just so much more capitalist. There are like tiny little enclaves, like, Hong Kong for a while was like super capitalist, Shanghai or whatever, or Singapore, I think is the one. Whatever, these various like little pockets of capitalism. But the US had that, not to the same extent necessarily, but over a whole nation where you can just literally do capital. And it's so stark, the US people in the audience won't necessarily understand this. But if you've seen the contrast between the US and where I'm from, the UK, it is just so stark. The attitude of everyone is just so much different. You can just see it in their faces. It really is just a night and day difference. The Americans don't know how good they have it, really.
Oh yeah, for sure. Look, try living in the UK. Try living in one of these Commonwealth nations and see their attitude towards things. And as bad as it is in the US, and it's not good compared to what it could be, it's still easily the best that it could that in the world, as far as I'm aware, as far as actual wealth and the relative standard of the philosophy that people hold to. I want to go to Zark now, and then we'll hit up Nick, and then we'll keep it rolling. So Zark, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I am driving right now. For whatever reason, anytime there's a space is when I'm driving home, but I'm like pulling in my driveway in the next minute, so hopefully if there's any audio, that will be ending soon. But I did want to, Zulu, you had just talked about your new principal, and you had mentioned that you were still sort of, working out the edges and all that. So, like, do you want any, like, pushback or clarification or any sort of, like, questions on the principal, or do you just want this space to focus on the Dave debate? Because I have questions going either direction, whichever one you prefer.
I will say the audio is fairly peaky there, so if you're pulling into your driveway soon, maybe remember those questions and bring them in once you're inside, because it's going to be a little bit easier to parse it out.
I'll raise my hand again when I'm home.
Cool.
Sweet. All right. We'll let unless Lula has any super chats, we'll go to Chronic. Please jump in, Nick.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about like some of the standards that Dave like sort of applied. I don't think you can really call these philosophical, but like you have the standard of goofiness. Like when he encounters some proposition, some statement, he evaluates it on its goofiness. And like the problem with this approach to philosophy or any question is that it just validates normies. It validates the normie who's like, no taxes, but then how are you going to fund the entire military on the border? Or like, no FDA, but then how will my children be safe from sawwood in their Rice Krispies? Or like, like any application of the standard of goofiness, it's just like it's a destruction of innovation. It's a destruction of and it's a destruction of like principled, honest behavior. Like because I know people who think it's goofy not to lie to people about the hours you've worked at work. Like at some point, I've worked with people who would like extend the hours they were working just to get extra wages and like extend it on the timesheet, but not to actually work. And then like that's dishonest. But it's like, well, I'm just getting more money. I don't care. Like that. It's goofy not to do that, right? Or like the standard of goofiness as applied to like the way Dave treats principle libertarianism is the same way normal people treat libertarianism in general, right? Like he's just being a normie, right? And then we also have like the standard of like dadness, the standard of like if your children are going to be harmed by something, then you ought to oppose it with by any means necessary, right? So like that's the thing he says, like when about like the crackhead in the school. He doesn't say, well, the crackhead is going to violate the non-aggression principle by attacking random students. No, he says, no, by any means necessary. If anything is going to harm my children, I'm gonna destroy that, right? And like the problem with this standard is that it immediately refutes himself, because if you apply this standard like universally, you end up having contradictions. For instance, Dave will use this sort of like standard to justify border controls. You're like, well, the immigrants are going to come into the U.S. and some of the immigrants are going to harm people's children, and then those people, because they're their fathers, their parents, they need to do any means necessary to protect their children, right? Well, if you apply this standard like for the immigrants, like let's say you're an illegal immigrant in the U.S. and you have children, and like there are ICE agents who are roaming the streets, shouldn't you use any means necessary to defend your children? And I'm gonna leave that ambiguous, because I don't want to say like what that could be. Put the entire immigrant military on the U.S. border. But like, so like, applying this stat, like if you just take a moment to think, like, what does this actually mean? You realize that like Dave Smith, not only is this like completely unprincipled, it's also self-defeating, because like like the goofiness standard. Like if you Dave Smith is goofy by rejecting principle, right? He's rejecting principle. He says, like we should follow the non-aggression principle sometimes, but not other times. It's like, well, there's no like consistent reason to like, there's no consistency here, and it just leads to like absurdities on his own premise, like put the entire U.S. military on the border without aggressing on anyone, or like because they're somehow going to defend people's rights. Declare martial law so that we can reach minimal government. It's very amazing, right? What else do I have here? I have like 8 points that I wanted to address, but I'll probably shut up because I don't want to ramble too long.
Yeah, I do want to hop in on that like example of the immigrants you brought up, because yeah, if you are looking at this like a philosopher, if Dave Smith, God forbid, ever became a philosopher, ever actually studied philosophy, and he kept to that principle, well then he would say, yeah, we want it is proper for Mexicans to try and fund MS-13 or whatever to kill ICE agents. That's what Dave Smith would have to hold.
They should have a Freeman's militia, the Green Mountain Boys, except they're like the Green Mountain
Mexicans. Yeah. Like, if Dave Smith were to be consistent, he would have to hold that to be the case. And then, so you end up with this advocacy of war, and that's what I was trying to make that's the point I made in the debate with Dan Sanchez, is that Dave Smith's philosophy fundamentally implies war. Because what ends up happening there? He's saying that the Americans should arm themselves and go to war with the Mexicans, and the Mexicans, who have to protect their children as well, they've got to go to arm themselves and go to war with the Americans to try and what? To try and get this finite pie, which is America, right? They've got to get this finite pie of the economy, and they've got to go to war with each other to try and grab as much as they can. And you see the problem there. It's not a finite pie. What happened to trading? What happened to that alternative there? Right? Why not just have trade? And what does trade look like? In this case, it looks like open borders. That's what it looks like. But I will just say, before anybody else comes in, Saint Seneca 6 gave $10 US, so thank you very much for that. The NEP is true. Pardon me. This problem with drinking, it makes me burp. The NEP is true, but most people wrongly treat it as a threshold instead of a principle. From communists to minarchists, the only difference is how high their bar is for justifying aggression. And indeed, this is like the whole point about, how Stalin was a minarchist. He only wanted the state to do certain things, right? But that's what every minarchist thinks. At any stage at any level of it, they only want their state to do certain things, not everything, right? They only want the state to do certain things. And this is Chronic's point here, who's in the call. The arrow of regression. What does it regress into? Is it total socialism or total capitalism? Those are your only choices. And before Chronic jumps in on that, Huge Hat Harold did give $20. Thank you very much, man. That's a lot of money. Zulu, I know you're busy and the holidays are coming up. However, would you at some point, maybe after the holidays, consider doing a reaction stream to Peikoff's 1984 debate? It could be with Monhop or maybe even Leibowitz. Sure, if you're in the Discord, leave it in the Things to React to forum channel, and I'll get to that. I believe I have, I don't know which debate you're specifically referring to, but I have done, I believe, several Peikoff debates reactions with Monhop before.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, I had something I wanted to say, and now I'm kind of forgetting it. Oh, yeah. So you've kind of pointed to this already, and Chronic as well. But, to get slightly broader strokes here and maybe a little bit romantic or, kind of wishy-washy here, but I think it's a worthwhile, just thought experimental thing to consider. Like, so take our principle, which is that the non-aggression principle, that you should not violate rights or not initiate conflicts, and accept all of the reductios and bullet bites that come with that. Like, hey, you shouldn't blow up. You shouldn't stop the earth from being blown up by stealing. Now consider that and take that against Dave Smith's underlying principle, which seems to be that you should do whatever you need to do to protect your children. Okay, that seems to be his principle, because that is the time that you will get him to reject the non-aggression principle most consistently. Is if you put a question to him where that is the implication of not violating the non-aggression principle would be that his his children would be harmed. So just take these two principles and ask yourself which one leads to a more peaceful, productive, wealthy, happy society. The one where, okay, if the Martians ever came along, a scenario that will literally never happen, then hey, we're kind of fucked. Or literally, what Dave's proposal would be is essentially blood feuds. It's like, okay, absolute loyalty to your family, the same kind of familial loyalty that has kicked off the Israel-Palestine conflict. Okay, there's blood feuds that go back thousands of years. The same feuds that prompt the wars in Chicago, like Bloods and Crips going at each other because 50 years ago someone's granddad shot someone else's granddad, and now I have to get you back, and it's an endless back and forth between two like rival tribes. It's just tribalism. It's the same tribalism that is the root of it. It's the same tribalism that has held back human societies for literally tens of thousands of years. It's that is the principle that he is adhering to. It is the principle that will not and cannot produce long-term wealth and prosperity, because ultimately the fundamental isn't peace, it isn't prosperity, it is blood ties and familial loyalty. And that's the standard that he holds himself to. So again, not being super like rigorous there, I think kind of being a bit circumspect, maybe like kind of romantic, but I think it's worthwhile considering. Chronic, did you want to jump in real quick again
I do
before we
wanna-
go to the next hands?
I do want to jump in and finish up something. Like, first thing I just came up with this scenario. So suppose that you're a Martian father. You have like 1,000 little Martian children, right? And you're also the commander of the Martian space fleet. And you're seeing that the Earth people, they're developing space travel technology. They're becoming very much more powerful. But you also see that they've developed significant nuclear weapons stockpiles, and they're very violent. They fight each other a lot of the time. And you're realizing that like if the humans, they get into space and they go to Mars and they discover the existence of Martian civilization, that it's very likely that they might destroy Martians and harm some of your 1,000 children. And so is it the case that following the principle of dadism, that you must destroy the Earth to protect your children? Very big thinking here, right?
Maybe the Martians don't even have
about,
nuclear weapons, right?
Some of the origin of like nap exceptionism. Sorry, what did I do?
Maybe the Martians don't even have nuclear weapons. They're just like, okay, this is a crazy destructive technology they've just discovered here. Like, what the hell is this? We gotta go shut this down now.
Exactly. Yeah, the Martians, like, they didn't even think about like killing each other. They never violated the non-aggression principle until they saw that humanity was developing nuclear weapons. They're like, oh my god, I didn't even know this is possible. But okay, sorry, that's an aside. I want to cover like something that seems to be at the core of a lot of like NAP exceptionism, which is the idea of like emergency circumstances, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't violate the NAP except in an emergency, right? And like the problem with this theory is like what is like the essence of an emergency circumstance, right? And you look at each of these different scenarios, and it seems to be like your life is under threat, or like you would have incurred significant cost, right? Or like something like that. And like the problem with this theory is that this doesn't actually reduce in principle, because in all cases, at all times, your life is under some level of threat. Like, okay, this is difficult to understand. Like, I'm sitting in my house. I'm not really being held at gunpoint or anything, but like, I'm a living being. I'm a living agent. There's an fact of entropy, right? I'm getting hungry. I need to acquire food. Like, because of scarcity and my nature as a living organism, I'm always experiencing, emergency circumstances, in the sense that, I must acquire resources to continue living, right? I must act to acquire values. Otherwise, I'll just die, right? And so, like, the emergency circumstances, you can't actually develop this principled continuum, like from one end to the other, like where, like, at some point there's some too high level of a threat, like, because on both ends of the spectrum, like where supposing you live in turbo automated like Ancapistan, where like you things teleport into your mouth, right? Like food. even in that case, right, you still live in a world of scarcity. There's all this technology that is necessary to sustain that situation. It doesn't just continue existing like metaphysically by default. Whereas, like, in like the jungle, the Catachan jungle where, like, there's exploding frogs that cause nuclear detonations, right? In that situation, you're under emergency circumstances. You're clearly under threat. But like the fact is that in neither of these scenarios, like, this violated the non-aggression principle, like, actually, assist production, right? So that's my point there. Like, the emergency circumstance, like, theory of NAP exceptionism, it really doesn't hold up from a principle perspective. I do have a bunch of other notes here. I was gonna like talk about the bank teller theory, or the duress theory, but I think I need to think about that more. I'm not sure about duress theory, because the idea that I don't think it really squares with conflict theory as the root here, where like initiating a conflict is what is prohibited. But I'll probably leave that concern for later. One last thing, I want to talk about like the scenario metaphysics, which is basically like when someone's proposing
can I just,
a reductio scenario.
Before you get into that,
it's like there's a metaphysics that is implied by these scenarios, right? So
I just muted Chronic for you.
Yeah, no,
sorry, man.
Just before you get into that, I did have something to say on the idea of what the hell was it? It was what the hell was he just talking about? Just
well, he was talking about duress theory, but before that, he was talking about basically, it was kind of connected to arrow of regression and how I'm actually going blank myself. I'm not gonna lie.
What the fuck? This is like an anti-meme. It just left her mind the second it happened. What the fuck? Hold on, Chronic. What was the first point you just made there?
Emergency circumstances.
Emergency circumstances. Yes. Okay. Great. So yes, this point was actually made to me earlier, where you were saying
emergency circumstances.
Yeah. So you were saying how it ends up like when you analyze it, just doesn't actually end in anything other than just total socialism. And so somebody earlier, I was debating with him on Twitter, I asked them, like, okay, well, what is the standard for what makes an emergency circumstance? What is an emergency? And the definition they said a tentative definition of an emergency case is a situation in which a value is endangered due to circumstances beyond the individual's direct control or choice. And, my response to that was, I don't have direct control or choice over the state taking my money, so I'm in permanent emergency. So it is fine for me to commit whatever acts of aggression I want against anybody ever, right? So I'm allowed to like rape their daughter, I'm allowed to steal their car, I can rob the bank, I can do whatever the hell I want, because I'm just in this permanent emergency. Right? It's just a permanent emergency because it's beyond my control. And this is what happens when you actually try and, interrogate these Randians for what does an emergency circumstance mean. They'll say it's metaphysically abnormal. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? I don't know what it means for something to be metaphysically abnormal. Tell me what that means.
Demons appear to rape you and use duress.
And as it turns out, when you really analyze these things, it's like the pragmatists, how they had their whole theory of meaning, right? And go listen to the Peikoff lecture on pragmatism, and you'll see how many iterations of their theory of meaning they had to go through. And as it turns out, like, they went through, like, it's called verificationism, if you're interested in looking it up. They went through so many different iterations because they wanted certain things to be meaningful and certain things to not be meaningful. And, like, they just couldn't get it to work, right? As it turns out. Actually, this is the logical positivists who are after the pragmatists. Apologies for that. But they just kept trying to make this theory of meaning operate properly. And it either included way too many things for them or way too few things. And they just kept going through this process of like, okay, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And every step, they just had some fundamental flaw in it. As it turns out, it just doesn't work, actually. It's just false. There's just a false theory. You just have bad premises. And that's what I think is happening with the theory of emergency circumstances. But yes, apologies for Chronic. Nikola Pavkovich, the Pavkovich-Mises theory of regression. He is the originator of this enunciation upon it. So thank you very much. Apologies for interrupting you.
I just want to say real quick, the whole like metaphysically abnormal thing just reeks, and I'm gonna again apologies to Christian who's in the chat. It sounds Kantian or Platonist as fuck. Okay, the idea the idea that like the underlying metaphysics can like be abnormal to where I don't like what I feel like that implies something about existence itself. If you're talking about like the ontology or the epistemics of some scenario being abnormal, it just seems incredibly just not objectivist as far as I can kind of gather. I want to go to Zark. Zark put his hand up.
First,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, can I I do have some super chats now. So
yeah, go for it.
Thank you very much to everybody who's super chatting again. This is great stuff. Love it. I love getting money. I'm a big greedy gobbler capitalist. I love gobbling up all your money and exploiting you for all your money. Thank you very much. So Nuclear Mayhem at 92.38 for another 20 NOK, North Korean dollars, I believe that is. Any line drawn arbitrarily can be arbitrarily moved, presumably. Yeah, indeed. Like if you're just arbitrarily stating it anywhere, then it can just be anywhere else. That doesn't really matter. Which is why you need to have like a principal difference in your continuum case. And then McDonut 2004 for $5 Thank you very much. Zulu, genuine question. If refusing to act foreseeably causes serious harm, does the daisies. Does the NEP treat inaction as aggression, or is it morally irrelevant? So it would depend on the specifics. So, for instance, if refusing to act in the case of like the trolley problem or whatever, well then you're not causally relevant in that chain of action, right? You're not causally relevant there. Whereas there might be some cases where you are causally relevant. I would suggest you read Kinsella's article or paper, whatever it is, on causation and aggression. You just search up Kinsella, causation and aggression, and you'll probably find it. But yeah, that's like how you can really suss out these sorts of scenarios.
So we have a shitload of hands to get through, so I'm going to start rolling through them. So if Zark is putting his hand up again, so it looks like he's available. So we'll go to Zark, and then I want to hit up Inputs Error, and then Cosmo, and then I promise we will get to all the rest of the hands. Thank you, everyone, for being super patient. I really appreciate it. Go ahead, Zark.
Thank you, and thank you guys for having this space. So, what I was saying on my drive home was, I have some questions, clarifications, and pushback on all that with the bank teller principle. But I know that you had said that you were still just kind of fleshing that out, and it's a work in progress. So, I was asking if you wanted this space to focus on like that actual principle and responses and pushback, or if you want this to focus more on the Dave debate. In which case, I have some comments and questions about the debate. So are you cool with the bank teller principle kind of being analyzed, or do you want this to focus on your debate with Dave?
I would say because of the quantity of hands, probably focus mostly on the Dave debate. Just so we can like rattle through them.
Oh yeah, totally understandable. So with the Dave debate, two things that I would want you to talk about is A, it's been kind of talked about in our circles lately, the distinction between would you actually do it versus should you do it, where it seems that Dave is kind of relying on the fact that like, well, I mean, let's be real here. If the Martians are threatening to blow up the entire Earth unless you steal a penny, you're going to be like psychologically terrified. There's going to be a lot of, stress going on, and saying like, would you actually do it is distinct from should. So I've seen a lot of people going that route. Just kind of your comments on if you do
go that route if you do like to make the distinction between, well, maybe I would, but that's independent of if I should. And then just, which has already kind of been talked about, but not only like Dave's lack of a philosophy, but also just like his meshings of multiple, where it seems like he's kind of, leaning into some ethical intuitionism, but then also sort of like some virtue ethics. And then like he's not read up on any of these philosophies enough where, like Michael Humer's, the most well-known ethical intuitionist, I would say, at least in our circles, and he did not argue that like Michael Humer would. So he's sort of like relying on that philosophy, but not bothering to do the actual research and work on like how an ethical intuitionist would actually engage in that debate. He just sort of goes like, well, it's intuitively not what I would do, so I'm just going to end the debate here when, the entire point of like an intuitionist thing is like the starting point, not the end. So just sort of like that, like how it's impossible to really nail him down on anything because he really has no underlying philosophy, and any philosophy he kind of references, he doesn't really stick with.
Yeah. So as for the first point you made, where sorry, again, it slipped my mind.
Would versus should. Would
versus should,
still
yes.
a penny versus
So
should you, yeah.
no, I made this point. I can't remember where, which is that okay, whether or not I have like some breaking point, where I would just become like some sort of an animal, and I just like I need to just have food right now. Maybe you starve me for like a week straight, and I just have to grab food. So okay, well, whatever. Whether you would violate your principle in these situations doesn't refute the principle itself. Like the principle, either it's been proven or it hasn't been proven, that you would break it, that you can't live up to your ethics, is not a disproof of those ethics, right? And as for the point about Dave, kind of having this grab bag method of doing philosophy, where he just takes all these different points from different places. Yeah, that's kind of just saying that he's, he doesn't have an explicit philosophy. He hasn't studied philosophy at all. He's just, the way I talk about this is as can't remember the exact term that I use, bundled philosophy, that's it. He just has a bundled philosophy. It's just all these different bundles that he collects from every other place, and he just wants all the bundles to be kind of neatly placed, and he doesn't really care about integrating anything or evaluating anything on his own. It's just bundles, and you can just take those bundles and they can be borrowed from person to person, and ironically, that's what makes someone ideologically possessed, which is a term he loves to use against me. He loves to use this term against me. But let's look at what ideologically possessed actually means, right? This is a term from Jungian philosophy. What it means to be ideologically possessed is that you're just kind of like an placeable, like just a replaceable, completely, doesn't matter which one you pick, acolyte of some philosophy, some belief system, right? Where, the particular person doesn't matter. Right, you're just kind of, the philosophy, the ideas are speaking through you, rather than you articulating your own ideas. Jordan Peterson has a great discussion of this in Maps of Meaning, very early on. But that's what Dave is doing. He doesn't actually have a philosophy himself. He isn't evaluating these ideas. He'll tell you this. He will tell you that he doesn't actually evaluate these ideas philosophically. He told me this. Right? So he is the one who's ideologically possessed, not me. Like, this is, again, every accusation is an admission with these people. You're ideologically possessed. What does he mean by that? Well, he means that I'm just an interchangeable, that's the word I was looking for, acolyte of some philosophy. Am I interchangeable? No. You're not getting these same fucking words from anybody else. Nobody else before. Please, Dave Smith, show me the person before me who is making these same sorts of arguments. Show them to me. They don't exist. Can I show you the people who are making the same Dave Smithian arguments before Dave Smith? 100%. Dave Smith will say 100%. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, Dave, show us. um, so, um, so, quick point on the would versus should thing. Like, I know Dave is like really wishy-washy about his religious beliefs, and I'm not holding that against him. I'm just stating it as a matter of fact. But a lot of these people are Christians, or at least like Jacob's definitely a Christian, and a lot of these guys are Christians, or at least are very sympathetic to Christianity. Well, the would versus should dichotomy is like a core, like it's one of the most core foundational aspects of Christian theology, where it's like, hey, we are made in the image of God, and God and God and Jesus. I mean, they're supposed to be the same thing, right? But Jesus's standard is the standard to live up to. Okay, he is the principle that you ought to hold to, right? But us humans, being fallible, we're going to sin. Okay, because we have free will, and God is, so loving that He gave us free will. That's kind of the Christian explanation. So clearly, these people accept that, hey, you can have an ethical standard that you ought to hold yourself to in all cases, in all scenarios, at all times, and yet fall short of it without falling short of it, disproving the standard. Okay? Jesus's standard is the standard according to Christianity. Every human being, as far as I think Christianity is concerned, every human being at some point falls short of that standard. That doesn't change the standard. The standard is unerring. Okay, so again, the non-aggression principle is the standard, is the ethical principle that you ought to hold to as far as law and as far as like conflicts are concerned. I can accept, okay, that yeah, look, if I was under enough duress to the point where someone was torturing me so much that the pain was just unbearable, that hey, maybe I would lash out and hit someone in order to stop that from happening. Okay, fine, whatever. I'm an imperfect human being. That doesn't establish anything whatsoever about whether that was right or wrong. It just shows that I was inconsistent. I'm a human being. So, so be it. Thank you very much for that, Zark. So unless you had any super chats, I want to go to Inputera and then to Cosmo. So thanks for coming on, Zark. Inputera,
I did
please,
get
go
one
ahead.
just as you were saying that from
Yeah,
Philosophos one for $2. Thank you very much. Any plans to update the libertarian ethics course? Yes, I'm planning to rewrite it and turn it into a book at some point.
Hell yeah. Inputera, please go ahead.
Can you hear me fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. Just what Zulu was saying a couple of moments ago about this kind of bundle philosophy. It was kind of reminiscent of what Kinsella was talking about with his bundle of rights theory in that Twitter space he and Zulu did a while ago. Now, that was just a funny little similarity I thought of. But anyway, I had just two things to say, which was first, I really only thought the only point on which there was like an actively bad performance from Zulu in the debate was on the fuss stuff. Like Dave brought that up, and it just seemed like there wasn't any pushback towards that. Other than that, I didn't notice like any active like concessions or anything. I thought it was a fairly good performance. My second point.
I will say on the fuss stuff, like the reason why I didn't go into it is because it's like a whole big fucking massive 2+ minute quote with all of the quote unquote left out context, right? So I wasn't able to write all that down, and I can't write all that down and have it all there for me in a debate, especially not with fucking Dave Smith. He's just going to interrupt me 20 times a second, right? So, and I point people off, like, hey, I've gone over all this context already. Look at that if you want. And honestly, it doesn't actually pertain to the debate resolution. It doesn't fucking matter whether or not I edit Dave out of context as far as the resolution is concerned. So I just didn't really care that much in that context.
Okay, yeah. he was just hitting that point for like 1 or 2 minutes. It just seemed like Yeah. Anyways, I guess the second thing I wanted to say was on this new principle. I'm just wondering, like in these cases with where you have some intermediary like someone who's ringing up your groceries at the grocery station or a bank teller, it seems like there's a good razor to use for this, which is like the theory of social norms, right? Like no employer expects you, like it's understood, if not explicitly, then implicitly, that like no employer really expects you to die over, some oranges or the stuff in your cash register, the money in your cash register. So it seems like if that's not if it's not like explicitly written down in a contract you signed, then seems like that's already taken care of by the theory of social norms.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. But I think this principle does apply elsewhere as well, like where there, because we also have to answer the case of where there isn't that social norm, right?
Sure. Yeah. That was all I had to say.
Sure. Thanks for that, man. Really appreciate it. Quickly wanted to get onto this first stuff real quick and give my take on it because I understand, Zulu, from your perspective, not wanting to jump into it. I have actually no issue with that. I think it's mostly extraneous to the point. It was like a short clip in a very, very long video that people have decided to zero in on. I will say two things on this, and I think, I don't know if I brought it up. I think I may have done a super chat in your live stream responding to Dave when it was brought up. But most of the people that are bringing this up are basically self-reporting because from my perspective, like, the thing is, the argument that they're making is, well, you clipped that video to make it seem like what Dave was saying is because Fur holds these views, I will, there's things worth killing over and there's things worth dying over, yada, yada, yada. The thing is, Dave's claim is that what he said is, no, I didn't say that. What I said was, if I was poor, then there would be things worth dying over and things worth killing over. And my contention is, well, it doesn't really change anything about what you're saying about fur. That's just you saying that under your specific circumstances, you don't think it would be worth it to do because you're rich enough that your own kids don't have to worry about this. But it doesn't change, in my opinion, anyway. It doesn't change the core of what. Sorry, I got a call. I don't know if I dropped out there briefly. It doesn't really change, in my opinion, the core of what he's claiming there, as far as Foe's kind of his perspective on Foe. So I don't know. That's kind of my take on it. That might be a bit stronger than what a lot of people are willing to go, but that's fine. I want to go to
Well, just say
Cosmo now.
I'm just gonna
Oh,
go.
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna go to the restroom real quick. So I don't know. You can riff with whomever, but Jose Gallison is also saying he wants to come up and speak at some point. So let's try and work that in as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Jose, if he's listening on YouTube, jump in, and we'll make sure to fit you in. I guess what I'll do is I'll go to Cosmo. You can jump in now. Anyone that, if Cosmo, unless you have like a super specific question for Zulu, I'll try and fill Zulu in, or we can fill Zulu in when he gets back. But yeah, like I'll get you to jump in, and I can kind of respond, and then Zulu can respond when he gets back. So Cosmo, please go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I did have a question for Zulu, but one thing I just kind of got curious about, why don't, like, say for example, communists or other political theorists use like Crusoe and Friday situations and examples to try and come up with a theory? Like, it seems like that's a uniquely libertarian or possibly Rothbardian thing.
I think it's because, I mean, from the perspective of someone who thinks that, libertarianism is true and the rest of these ideologies are false, seems like it's probably comes down to the fact that they need the complexity of the scenario in order to make it work, because functionally what the Caruso by himself and then the Caruso and Friday example is you're getting to the most general case. You're getting to the case where there's no, as we were talking about just before, there's no social norms, there's no contracts, there's no like agreements, and there's no complexity in order to shield any inconsistencies with. So how do you resolve any issues under that frame, under that scenario? That's what, in my view, that's how the Caruso and Friday example is functioning. And so I just don't think, as far as political theories, it may not be correct to call libertarianism political theory, but as far as as far as legal theories, okay, let's go with that. As far as legal theories are concerned, like the legal positive is just like don't care. Like that's the thing. Like their view is, well, you just create the law. The law is what the authority says it is. So they probably wouldn't have an answer to the Caruso on Friday because there's no like overarching jurisdiction that's like giving the law from on high that for people to interpret. So I think a lot of ideologies either would prefer not to do it because they need the obfuscation of complexity. And I would also say that most people are legal positivists, and legal positivists just don't have any interest in that scenario because it doesn't, like as I said, there's no authority giving the law for them to then interpret properly. So did you want to jump back in on that at all?
No, not really. Okay, I do have a question for Zulu because he's back now, right?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, it looks like Zulu's back. So did you want me to? Did you want to ask Zulu a similar question, or?
I wanted to ask him something different.
All right, yeah, for sure. Go ahead. That's totally
So
fine.
Zulu, during your debate with Dave Smith, you mentioned this. He kept interrupting you. It was very, very painful to watch. I noticed a lot of people saying that you should have interrupted him more. You should have interrupted Dave more and stood up for yourself. And I think it wouldn't have really, he wouldn't have been able to interrupt you so much if Winograd was a better moderator and wasn't biased towards Dave. So do you feel like you should have cut off Dave more in that debate? Or do you feel like you're satisfied with your performance there?
I talked about this a little bit earlier, where I do think I should have been more aggressive against Dave. And I think the reason why I wasn't as aggressive as I should have been, was because I wasn't tipsy at all. I hadn't drank anything. I'll take note of that going forward. But I want to, highlight, I mean, Jacob will say this forthright, that he did make mistakes in moderating. He's not claiming that he was the perfect moderator there. But I also made a lot of mistakes there. I think my primary mistake was, and I've only realized this recently, was that I didn't drink during that debate. That was a big mistake there. I should have drank, and then I would have had my social inhibitions lowered, and I could have debated more vociferously. That was my mistake. And also, I did a prep mistake where I didn't realize what Dave was doing in that debate. Namely, I didn't realize that he was literally going into it thinking that the purpose of the debate was for me to bite bullets. Right? I've spoken about this elsewhere. He thought like the entire point of the debate wasn't to prove the resolution, true or false. He thought that the point of it was that I was saying, hey, let's have a conversation where you put any bullet towards me and I'll bite it. He thought that that was the case, and he said as much during his response to me, but I didn't pick up on it, and that was my mistake for not picking up on that. So, don't place all the blame on Winograd. There's plenty of blame to be placed on me for not being aggressive enough. I should have been stronger in my rhetoric, and I would have been if I had drank at all during that debate. So that is my mistake, and I will rectify it going forth.
All right, thank you so much. What was I gonna say? I don't know. The best Zulu is a tipsy Zulu or something like that. All right.
I do want to say real quick, because I came out pretty hard against Jacob when the podcast first just after the debate. Look, I stand by how I feel about his moderation. I think it was great. I think he did an okay job in hindsight. Could have done better, but look, as I said to Zulu on Zulu's performance, no one's perfect, and this was a challenging or kind of unique situation. So I'll give him some grace and not to like leak DMs or anything, but I have reached out just to apologise for being a bit hard on him straight after the debate. I'm not going to delete the post or anything, but I did reach out to just say, yeah, like I'm sorry, I went a bit hard, and I think as Zulu has said before, and as I think Casimir mentioned to me as well, like Jacob deserves credit for even getting the thing to go ahead, because and he mentioned this to me, Jacob did, that he has, and this seems to be pretty obvious as well from like public stuff. Like, there's a lot of people in Dave's camp that just don't want this to happen. They just don't want Dave to engage with Zulu or any of us. They just think it's a waste of time. So he has copped a fair bit of flack from that community or that group for doing this. And bearing in mind that that's where he comes from. Like, Dave was his introduction. He's friends with Dave and he's friends with these people. So, I'm sure like if I was doing something that I felt was right, but I was getting pushed back from, Zulu or other people within like kind of our camp, like I'd be like, shit, like this is kind of tough for me to, deal with. So I have, in retrospect, kind of, very much softened on how I feel about Jacob's performance, or at the very least how I feel about Jacob in light of the performance. Because at the end of the day, the fact that he even got this thing off the ground and actually made it happen and has led to the point where, Dave is going back and forth with me, of all people, on X, is like a huge development, and he deserves, a fair bit of credit for that.
I do want to add on to that, like, because
Yeah, go ahead.
like, this was a very difficult debate to get in the first place. Like, and, I wasn't actually able to communicate with Dave during any of this. I had to communicate through Jacob. Jacob did put in a good amount of legwork to actually get this thing done. So he does deserve props for, like, putting himself out there and trying to get this thing to happen. And I don't think he had malicious intentions at all. Like, I really don't think that's the case. Some people might want to believe that, but he didn't have malicious intentions. I really don't believe that. So I do want to, make clear that I don't hold aspersions towards Jacob as being valid.
Yeah, awesome. Also, I've seen Jose is on the stage, which is pretty cool. We'll get to Jose soon. I do want to go to, because obviously, people have been waiting for a while, and I'm always conscious of that because I've been a speaker on a space and waited for a long time to speak before. So I'm just
A certain
really
particular
appreciative of
space.
all the people. Sorry?
A certain particular space, which I might have covered in the video.
Yeah. Well, even like other spaces, like apart from that, like I sometimes jump on with people that like are spaces hosts. That's what they do, and so they get like really large audiences of like a couple of hundred people, and it takes a long time, even once you get up on stage, to actually get to speak. So I really do appreciate the patience that goes into doing all this, so we'll get through some more of these hands. So I want to go to Nye, and then we'll hit up Will, and then we'll go to Acorn. So Nye, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. The topic that piqued my interest tonight is objectivism and emergencies. Now, Rand wrote a paper on this, but what I find more interesting than that paper, as is often the case with Rand, is her novels and how the topic comes up in her novels. So there's going to be some minor spoilers for Atlas Shrugged here, but I'll go ahead anyway because they don't spoil anything major. It's in part 3. There's a situation where the railroad supervisors are ordered to send a coal-burning engine through the tunnel. And if they do this, the tunnel was only made for gas engines. They're ordered to send a coal engine through it. If they do it, everyone on board will suffocate and die. If they refuse to, they'll be fired from the job. And it's in the state of the world is if they get fired, nobody else is legally allowed to hire them. The entire economy is frozen, so they'll starve to death. And their children will starve to death. So she set up this emergency, this metaphysical abnormality, where it seems the self-interest of some are put against the self-interest of others. In order to serve your own interests, you have to sacrifice the people on the train, or sacrifice your own interests in order to save them. Now, what Rand does here is there's like a chain of supervisors. They keep passing the buck on to the next guy, so they're not responsible. But it eventually comes down to this guy, Bill Brandt. And what he does is he shrugs, he walks away, he refuses to send them through the tunnel, and he looks for a way, presumably, to survive in the wilderness. Even cut off from the entire economy, he never gives up his principle, and he knows, or he has confidence in himself, that he can survive despite these horrific conditions. So I think that story is worth telling. Whenever we come into these objectivism debates, we should go back to the fiction, because Rand often has very surprising things hidden in there.
Yeah, I will say, like, this is another thing which came up during our book club. Me and Nye had a book club for Atlas Shrugged. Another thing which came up where it seems Rand is more honest in her fiction than her non-fiction. Perhaps not more honest, but more true to reality, which actually aligns up with the objectivist theory of aesthetics, that you've got to be really consistent with reality to make good works of art. Is that her theory of IP kind of just falls apart, because John Galt, he's not the Prometheus who went out and stamped out everybody else's fire. He's the John Galt who retracted his fire from the world. He just didn't give it to them anymore. And then, what is Wyatt's torch? Wyatt just said, okay, I give it to you as I found it. Go ahead, make of it what you will. Right? It's the idea that these people are shrugging. That's the whole theme of the book. Everybody is shrugging. What does it mean to shrug? They just go, okay, take my business. Go ahead. And I'll just walk away. I'll just walk away to some place, perhaps. Not to give too many spoilers. But that is the idea, that's more of like a Kinsella view on IP. That when these people, it's not that you go out and stamp out everybody else's fire. It's not that you go out and prevent everybody else from being able to implement the same methods. It's that you just, the productive men, just don't grant that to the world anymore. And as it turns out, the world, the idiot masses, the egregore, can't maintain it at all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the sentiment that Ayn Rand gets really honest in her fiction. And I think another piece of evidence for that is, the one that we like to bring up a lot to the more like the Randian, like mainstream or like traditional objectivists, about Galt's Gulch being like a Hoppian Covenant community. That is like my favorite thing to just bring up to him over and over again. It's like, yeah, basically Galt's Gulch is just, he is the keeper of a covenant, and they have essentially private dispute resolution. The counter to that is always that, well, they don't have like competing firms for rights enforcement, and my position on that is, well, that's not an inherent part of anarcho-capitalism. Like, that's what covenant communities are, is like organized structures where the property is held in a covenant, and that's how you resolve it, or that's how disputes are handled on the basis
Could
of
you
contracts more so.
result conflicts via like mutual combatants or just like self-defense or?
Right. Well, yeah, that would be permitted in Hoppianism. But yeah, so I just think that's another example of where Rand kind of like Galt's Gulch is basically anarchy, as far as I can tell. I want to go to. No, did you want to jump back in real quick before we go to the next person?
Yeah, I had one last wrap-up point about emergencies, which is before that point in Atlas Shrugged. The way it gets to that point is a long string of basically people using an emergency as a pretext to regulate the economy. And through the course of the whole book, emergency after emergency, which spawns more emergencies, you get to the point where everything is an emergency. And these like natural disasters, snowstorms and tidal waves and things that used to be completely manageable become existential threats. So one man's emergency is another man's normal Saturday evening. And it depends on whether you stick to your principles or not.
Another arrow of regression mentioned. How good. I want to go to. Well, first of all, St. Jacob's jumped in. Jacob, you missed about 10 minutes ago, or 10, 15 minutes ago, where Zulu and I were singing your praises for doing the debate.
We're all glazing you, Jacob. You missed it.
Yeah, I know. You need to go back and listen to it. But yeah, we'll get to you shortly. I want to go to Will again. Obviously, you spoke earlier, Will, but you've been super patient and just waiting there. So I really appreciate that. So Will, and then Acorn, and then you can always change your mind. And then we might try and hit up Jose and Jacob if either of them want to jump in. But yeah, Will, please go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna say this, that might makes right is a pretty objective way of looking at a natural law, and I would say that it's just as much of what you could consider a natural law, even more so than the non-aggression principle, and it's how you would enforce your own rights. So, for instance, if you walk on someone else's lawn, would it make sense for someone to just blow their own brains out because they feel bad about walking on someone else's lawn, or would it, or should that be more enforced by the individual who has that, or should that be enforced by the property owner? Like, if they really mind that much, for whether how much do they mind that this person walked on their lawn?
So I'll say, might doesn't make right. Might makes. Right? It does make reality. Might does indeed make reality. Like, whatever outcome occurs came about because the person overcame the other person as far as conflicts are concerned. They overcame the other person. So might makes, might doesn't make right. So and for like hold on. For your example of walking onto the lawn, should they blow their heads out? You know, presumably if they're like an NAP absolutist. No. The correct way to deal with that is to walk off their fucking lawn. Get out of their property. Stop trespassing. That's the way to deal with that. And for the property owner, if they want to get the person off their property, they have to take the gentlest possible means. And I talk about this in my course on, I derive this from Deus Say's let exclusion stand principle. I say that you have to use the gentlest means possible because otherwise you're initiating an extra conflict over top of it. Like if I'm able to exclude you by just escorting you off my lawn, like maybe you just didn't know that was my lawn, right? Maybe you just didn't, maybe you weren't paying attention. And I'm like, hey, get off my lawn. This is the way out. That is the minimal possible way to get you out of my lawn. If I then escorting you out and I start stabbing you in the arm with a needle, well, that's an extra action. That's an extra aggression. That doesn't actually achieve the purpose of exclusion at all, right? So it's just an extra aggression. And this applies to all of these examples over, oh, there's a child kicked his ball into my lawn. He ran over to retrieve it, which, by the way, I have a whole theory about how retrieving balls works. Go read my course or pay any amount of money above $1 and you can watch the thing. And then this child came onto my lawn and I shoot an RPG at him and he blows up. You know, sure, that does exclude him from your lawn, but it also does a whole bunch of other things. So I don't accept your initial premise there.
Will, yeah, you can come back in if you would like to, just on that.
Oh, thank you. So like my whole point is, well, I was actually going to make like two different points, which is in terms of the use of force. Sometimes like you don't know how much is going to be like necessary to get someone off of, like, let's suppose your own property. In terms of like self-defense, I'm going to say.
Okay, can I just jump in on that real quick though? Because sometimes I don't know, what will repair my car, but there is an objective truth there. Right? That I haven't discovered the objective truth doesn't mean there isn't one. Right? That some fucking bumbling moron doesn't know what is the proper means of defending his property doesn't mean that there isn't one.
I'm going to say that you use the minimum amount of force in order to prevent collateral damage,
No.
which would hurt
Specifically, the
bystanders.
gentlest
So.
means possible. That is
Yeah, but
whatever is
that's why.
necessary to exclude the person from their property, but nothing other than that. If it's necessary to
Well,
exclude them from their property, then yeah, it's licit. If it's not necessary, then it's illicit.
All right, so in terms of like, let's suppose, all right, like I do agree, verbal judo, in terms of self-defense, is going to be more important than physical judo. However, like without using the use of force, whether that be like just saying, "Hey, get off my lawn," or "Sorry, sir, this is private property. I'm going to ask you to leave," or something of that nature. It in practice becomes virtually consent on that level. So, like, which was my whole point about might makes right, which it also shows you how much you would really mind
Well, no,
in the
even
same
if the
scenario.
trespasser was Superman, and I literally could not exclude him no matter what I did, it doesn't make it right that he's on my lawn, right? I might not have kryptonite there to exclude him from my lawn, but it doesn't make it right that he's on my lawn. Like, I'm trying my darndest to get him off there, but he's just able to resist it all.
I agree from a moral perspective. However,
Well, that's what
things
right
fall into
means.
place. Well, I mean, everything is God's fault, and if He's like the arbiter of truth, then like, if I guess in that case you could, in a way, justify bad stuff. But
Well, yeah,
if
that's
you
what
don't
right
really
means, though.
like,
That if you're saying might makes right, you're saying that because this person overcame this other person, it was justified for them to do it. That's what might makes right
I mean,
means.
they should at least have enough.
As against might makes. I agree with might makes. It does indeed be the case that if Superman came off my lawn, he could take over my house. Like, Superman could do that if he wanted to. But it doesn't make it right that he did that.
Cool. All right. I appreciate that.
But I will say, like, not using any force, including just verbally, like, not consenting to it, it in practice does become consent. So
Also, Superman can't overcome the Zyke.
This is very true.
Yeah, exactly. The Zyke has kryptonite, so that's fine.
The Zyke.
Quick point on the uncertainty, because like I get that. You know, in reality, obviously we're always dealing with uncertainty as far as how our means will exactly, you know, manifest and whether they will actually resolve the issues that we're trying, like lift the uneasiness, right? Man can err. On that, basically, it would just be my advice. Hey, you know, err on the side of, like, if someone is just like passing across your lawn, err on the side of, hey, use the minimal necessary, and if it proves to be insufficient, then escalate. Like that's basically the principle that they talk about in, you know, when you're trying to, you know, if you're a bouncer that's going to work at a nightclub, like the basically the what they'll teach you is, hey, you know, only escalate if necessary. Don't start from the top and then, you know, be like, oh shit, like this guy like came up and tried to enter the bar without, you know, his ID, and so I just, you know, pulled my gun out and shot him in the head. It's like, well, okay, that was a bit unnecessary. Like, hey, just put your hand on him and push him away and say, hey, man, just wait in line and we'll get to you soon. You can come in soon. Like, you know, and then if he doesn't, then you escalate. Then you like shove him away, or you kick him out, or you know, you do whatever you need to do. And then eventually, if he's like pulls out a knife and he's like, no, I'm coming in no matter what, then maybe you can, you know, resolve it, you know, that way. But yeah, so yeah, look, that's just a piece of advice for people. You know, if you're dealing with someone who is, you know, initiating a conflict against you, like, it's better unless they've gone straight for the nuclear option, so to speak, like to work your way up, rather than, you know, doing something that you could potentially regret.
And by the way, this is the
yeah, go ahead.
You know, because I've been accused of being a rationalist recently, and I'm going to be doing a review of Michael Leibowitz's video calling me a rationalist tomorrow, with Man Sharma and Nikola Pavkovich, 5 Chronic 007 in this call. Where, you know, this is how we do arrive at some of these things inductively. Like, you look at this situation of the bouncer, you look at that and go, okay, well, it's actually not the case. It isn't, in fact. You know, we have this gentleness principle here. It's not the case that you're allowed to... Hold on. It's not the case that you're allowed to just immediately go and shoot the other person in the head with the bazooka, right? You literally do, because this is where epistemology comes in. How do you discover that a person is indeed going to be able to resist everything below shooting in the head? Well, the jurist just sits there and they have the scenario in front of them that, okay, well, this person cannot resist will resist anything below shooting in the head. And then the jurist can say, okay, well, then the principle is that you shoot them in the head, and that's fine. But how you get to that legal principle is you actually think of these scenarios, and you actually look at these scenarios, and you go, okay, well, what does gentleness mean? Well, you start with, epistemically, you have to start with the lowest possible means. And as they're escalating, you escalate with them. That is how you build up to it. You have to actually look at reality. And the principle says that. That's what the principle of gentleness says. So, again, I just have to say that. I'll go more into it tomorrow.
For sure. I want to go to Acorn because he's been waiting a very long time, and I really appreciate the patience. So we'll go to Acorn, and then you can always change your mind, and then we will keep it rolling from there.
Hi guys. I'm on my phone, so I hope my mic is okay. Also, it's been a while, so I hope I can remember everything I wanted to say. I originally thought this was going to be on Saturday, so I started listening a bit late. I started listening just as Zulu was complimenting me, so thanks Zulu for that. I'm glad for it. And regarding our last debate, I apologize for not recognizing how tired you are. I'm kind of bad at noticing things. But yeah, I think I can do better next debate if I have more time to prepare as well. I sent you a DM on Discord. I'm looking forward to rescheduling that soon. Regarding the Dave debate, when I was watching it, in the chat section, I saw a lot of people talking about how passive you were. And at the time, I sort of agreed with them because I went into it expecting Zulu to just destroy Dave in Bloodsports. But judging by what Zulu had said since the debate, I now realize that I think your goal was to simply win against Dave by flowing through. And you did mention that it'll filter out the chaff, which I agree with. And I definitely think you won the debate in terms of the flow. And you did apologize earlier for not being more forceful and cutting up Dave more often. I don't think you really need to be. If the goal is to simply reach the Remnant, show that the Remnant exists over here, and just shine out a beacon. And I do think that just simply flowing through and just being chill was enough, because Dave's ones that's just saying a load of nothing, and the true Remnant would be able to see through all of Dave's nonsense and understand that you were the one who were flowing through. I do think that it would be a lot more satisfying, a viewing experience, if we actually got to see just rip Dave to shreds. But that's more sheep herding stuff. In terms of strategy, I think what you did was fine. I wanted to say something regarding the first stuff as well, but Monhop basically said everything I wanted to say. Yeah, it's really funny how Dave's defense was still just self-incriminating. A thought I'd like to offer up is I saw that a lot of the people complaining against you for example the Martian thing and the ladder thing examples, is that they don't really understand how law is a subset of ethics. And the way I like to think of this is I sort of do a comparison to linear programming. And which is a mathematical concept. So I think these days, usually linear programming is done with algorithms and stuff, but you can do it with less constraints. You can do it on a 2D graph. I guess an example of linear programming would be to take a bar example, let's say you have metal and energy and build power, and your goal is to build as much eco as possible using either advanced solar collectors or geothermal. A geothermal is more efficient, but it costs too much energy. So some amount of solar is going to be needed to be built to not waste all the metal and store all the energy. So that would be one example. And I guess the comparison I use to the NAP as a subset of ethics is that the NAP is one of the constraints. And like other examples of constraints on your behavior are like, well, physically possible actions. For example, if you want to fly to space by yourself, like that's not an action you can physically take. And I think the way I think about it is you can basically, it's sort of like drawing a graph of a linear programming that you filter out the constraints limiting what you can't do. For example, you can't choose to fly out into space and just punch through all the spaceships of the Martians. That's something that you physically cannot do. And something that also you can filter out is just stealing a penny. Like stealing, like any action that violates the NAP, you can just cross that off of the possible solutions you can take. Like that's just off the charts. And then you're left with an area. And inside that area are like things that you haven't crossed out yet, but that doesn't mean that everything inside the area is equally valid. And it just means that you need to apply another principle, such as like the objectivist ethics, to try to find the best thing inside that. And so yeah, that's why I think it's like comparable to linear programming. I guess I also want to ask a question regarding the new principle.
But before you go into
yeah,
that,
you want to jump in?
Yeah, I do want to jump in on that. Because there's actually, I won't do any Pluribus spoilers here. But there is this one guy in Pluribus. By the way, Acorn, can you please mute your mic?
Oh.
Thank you. So I've been watching Pluribus. I've been enjoying it a whole lot. And there is this one guy who I've been very much vibing with. Like, he's just been doing all the same decisions I would do. Like, he like, well, maybe, to give the premise of the show, it's basically that SETI discovered this RNA sequence, which, when it was infected into somebody, it turns people into a hive mind. Anybody who's infected with it turns into a hive mind. And this guy, he has this whole... He's basically adopting the NAP. When he wants to, like, take some fuel to fuel up his car, he will leave some money in their windshield. And he just refuses to take anything from anybody. Because he's like, okay, well, this virus has just taken over. This hive mind has just stolen all these people's property and bodies and everything. And, like, he isolates himself in his house. Like, it's not even his house, it's like his like workplace. He just isolates himself there. It's like, I won't take anything from anybody. So I think this kind of relates to sort of the idea of sorry, again, I've lost the point I was trying to make there.
I was talking about like linear programming and about how the NAP was just like one of the constraints filtering actions that you can't take. You started talking about the Pluribus guy and how he won't take other people's stuff. Is this reminding you of anything?
Yeah, so hold on, sorry, my watch started going off. So yeah, he is kind of in what some might consider an emergency scenario. But he still isn't going to take the step of, stealing from people. Right? Trying not to spoil, he doesn't. Like, he goes through a whole lot without ever breaking that principle. And I think that is the moral ideal there. And for a real world example of this, look no further than Hugh Glass. Hugh Glass, he doesn't actually have, necessarily good ethics. But the guy went through more than perhaps anybody has ever gone through. Like this is just a slice of his life. He was kidnapped by pirates, and he escaped from the pirates. And then he ended up joining up with, like, this band of, like, explorers or whatever. And they went out, and he got mauled by a bear. And they thought, okay, well, this guy's fucking dead. So they just left him. They just left him to die. But he didn't die. He survived the mauling by the bear. But he couldn't walk, because the bear destroyed his legs. So he just kind of crawled his way over, and he, like, found this log with a bunch of maggots on it. And he rolled over onto the maggots to get them into all his wounds, so they would cauterize, they would get rid of all the germs in his wounds, because maggots only eat dead flesh. And he managed to make his way hundreds of miles back to civilization after being mauled by a bear. And that's probably like the third most interesting thing which happened in this guy's life. Seriously, go look this guy up. Like, this guy is fucking crazy. If that guy wasn't in metaphysically abnormal situation, I don't know who the fuck was. Like, this guy, did he have to aggress to survive? No, he didn't. Like, people seriously don't understand how much they can achieve if they really just think of solutions. And this is kind of the point I make around, if you have this cop-out, this escape hatch from the NEP, then you're just going to go for that every time. You're just going to go, okay, yeah, no, I'll just steal food to survive. I'll just steal it. And this is an example that Fabian Liberty brings up all the time. He used to be homeless. The guy used to actually be homeless. And he says this all the time. He didn't go with any meals. He went without any food for 3 days. And he still didn't steal anything. Like, you can actually do those things. You don't have to be a thief. You don't have to be a parasite. And I believe this was even before Fabian was a libertarian. So he didn't even have, like, an ethical justification of that viewpoint necessarily yet. But he just still didn't want to be a thief, I suppose. Like, please, everybody, go watch Fabian's stream. Go ask him about that. Like, it's a powerful story. Like, this is just what you end up coming to. Like, these people, they just want some sort of escape hatch from the NEP. But before we continue, I will have to say that Philosophos 1 did give $5, so thank you very much for that. Are you still trying to move Christians towards libertarianism via the Ten Commandments? I often see their deep ontological evasions spreading to politics. I mean, I don't have, like, a specific goal to move Christians towards the NEP. Obviously, Jacob does. I don't particularly care about it. I just say the message. I just preach the message, and people can come if they want. But I do think, like, you know, if you take the NEP if you take the Ten Commandments seriously, like he says, "Thou shalt not steal," seems pretty fucking clear to me. But also, the Leet Nut gave $2. These and uts. Thank you very much for that.
Hey, could I just say something really quick to what Zulu just said?
Yeah, go for it. That's fine.
Because, like, this was one of the times where I think I tried to intervene in the debate, and I think it just didn't work. But, like, because I've obviously talked with Zulu enough to, like, know some of his arguments, and I tried to press Dave on, like, do you not understand why? And I think he kind of did, like, acknowledged it, but I think he did it, like, not as maybe seriously as I wanted him to. But I was like, you're a peaceful parent, and you know that, like, one of the arguments for peaceful parenting mirrors what I think Zulu's you're trying to make, which is that, like, when you have these escape hatches, when you're just like, oh, I can just hit my kid if he's not listening, then, like, you're going to go to that all the time. That's a very big risk. Whereas there is a utility to saying, like, even when I feel like I don't know what the answer is, I'm taking force off the table, and then that opens up human innovation. And I do feel like that's an undervalued part of what you're trying to do, which, like, problems that Dave and solve this according to the NAP. And there's even some things where like you and I have talked, and I'm like, like I think you're all convinced, but I think we should like it's good to try to like push yourself down that road to be like, I'm going to take this off the table, and that's going to force me to try to solve this problem. And I'm like, like that is what, like, and if Dave wants to say, I don't have an interest in doing that because I'm not a philosopher, I don't have any problem with that. But like when other people are sort of like shitting on theory bros and those of us who are interested in talking about theory, it's like, this is what you have to do philosophy, just like that's what you have to do for science. Is like science, you can't just be like, oh, I don't know how to reconcile this principle with this problem, so I'm just going to give up. It's like, no, it's like the biggest scientific discoveries that have been made have often been made by like people who like would not give up until they solved an apparent contradiction or a problem that they didn't understand why, like with Einstein, like, oh, why is gravity and light bend around certain things? Doesn't make any sense. And then he comes up with a theory that explains it.
Right, and so and that's where it's like, look, I'm fine with Dave not being a philosopher. Just just as I'm not a physicist, I don't go around shitting on the physicists for coming up with new ideas or thinking through problems or coming up with goofy answers to problems that actually turned out to be correct when you actually look into them. So yeah, look, again, I had no problem with someone not being a philosopher or not being an economist. Rothbard has that famous quote about economics. It's just okay. Then just leave the discipline alone. That's kind of my take on it. Or be curious. That's fine, but don't be authoritative. Okay, I'm going to go to. I don't want to read a couple of things that are up the top here, but I want to get through the hands first because obviously people that come up on the stage, I want to kind of give priority. Did you want to jump in real quick? You can always change your mind.
Oh
I
yeah,
had 2 points left over. Is it okay if I do those first, or I'll be short on time?
Yeah, okay, sure. Go ahead. Okay, we'll go to that, and then we'll go to you can always change your mind, and then we'll help Cosmo, and then we'll go to Will. And then we might, I don't know what Zulu's looking like for time. We might think about starting to wind down a little bit. So if anyone wants to, I'm going to might kind of start setting a bit of a cutoff point at some point where it's like, okay, if you don't get up on the stage by now, then like you just miss out. I don't care like how desperate you are to speak. I don't care if your life's on the line. I don't care if the Martians are going to blow up the Earth. After this cutoff point, you don't speak. So just, yeah, okay. So I think Jose's jumped in.
So maybe keep the stage as it is, and then that can be the cut-off point,
Yeah.
and then we can get through the hands, get Jose, get through the things posted in the like Jumbotron or whatever it is.
Yeah, because I've seen these spaces like roll on for like hours after the host is like, I'm wrapping things up because then just people just keep going, oh, can I speak? Can I speak? So, okay, so we'll go to Acorn and then everyone's now put up their hand, which is fantastic. So we'll keep rolling, but Acorn, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mohop. Okay, I'll try to keep it short. Zulu, with new principle, it actually went in different directions than I thought it would, but I'll try to analyze it more later. But I just want a quick clarification. Are you saying that it's simply non-aggression to let the thief steal, or are you also saying that it would not be aggression to actively help the thief steal?
So I'm more saying that because you're under a specific sort of threat where your exclusion, that's the specific part there, that you have to be excluding from the means. So if you're helping the thief take the thing, then you're not excluding from the money, for instance. If your exclusion from the money would no longer be operative, then you're no longer culpable for giving that up. Because your exclusion has been overcome there.
It seems at the very least intuitive, right? Because, if I was, when I used to work at a pub, luckily I was fortunately never held at gunpoint, but like, I was just, and this is, I suppose, where the social norms point comes in, where, like Imputera was saying, like, look, a lot of workplaces will say, like, yeah, look, man, like if someone points a gun at you, we're not gonna hold it against you for, opening the till and handing them the money. But even absent that permission from the business, it still seems at the very least intuitive that you are permitted to, open up the till and hand them the money, in order to not be shot in the head.
But I do think
just
Acorn had a
doesn't make it
third
true.
point.
But yeah, sorry, Acorn, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll definitely think more about that and hopefully come up with a few scenarios I want to discuss in the next debate. I guess another point I want to make is that with Dave talking a lot about complaining about goofiness, like, oh, that's so goofy, man. I'm just gonna give a teaser that we didn't quite get to it in our last debate, but I think we'll get to a lot of goofiness when we debate again. Because I will be biting a lot of goofy bullets that maybe I shouldn't be biting, but I think the logic might take it there, and I'm just gonna try to argue for it and see if it works. But expect a lot of goofiness to make Dave very mad.
Sure, and if you're if you're not a father, then none of your arguments follow.
True. Just like two really quick questions. First is, how do you spell Deus Ex let exclusion stand principle?
It is DE space JASAY. That's his name. Deus let exclusion stand principle.
Cool, thanks. And the last tiny question is, I think if Chronic Seal 3, we might be doing some bar tonight. You interested in joining us?
Oh, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess it is getting late. We'll see you later then. Anyway, that's all for today. Great chat, everyone. Carry on.
Yep. See you later, man.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Acorn. We'll go to You Can Always Change Your Mind, then Will, and then we might finish up with two big guns, the two J's on the space. Let's do it.
Okay, thanks. I have written a whole page of notes. I hope that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead. Why not? Fuck it.
All right. So this was just all responding to things said there. So starting with the point about like America, how like it's different and such. I've never been to America, but I've been to Singapore like this autumn. I was there 4 days. I was very awestruck, like the buildings, the absolute cleanliness everywhere. That might maybe have something to do with some policies, but like it was like super clean. I didn't see one spot where it was like dirty, and it always smelled nice. No garbage smells anywhere. And then also like there was like big banks, like skyscrapers, like very many fine, beautiful skyscrapers. But so many banks, so it was kind of cringy. But imagine like all this stuff in a free world where like there's no mass evasion like we have now with statism and all that. And then like the stark contrast when I came back to Norway. I haven't been much to Oslo, but the plane went there, so I like decided to explore it for a bit. And the first thing of interest I saw was like a concrete building, a very like quite tall for Norway, and it said "trust" in Norwegian on it, like trust in the state, maybe. I think like very very like dystopian. And also I walked there too, like around. I think I like said hi deliberately to like 6 people, and not even one of them even looked at me. Very cold culture. Like the culture in Singapore is not like super great. Like I mean, it wasn't like astounding. I mean, but it wasn't like this. I could like talk to people. I could say hi to people, and some said hi back and such. And even like other places in Norway, you some people do say hi back. In Norway too, like you don't even. Sorry.
I will say on that, like, when I went to New Hampshire, this is the most recent time I went to the US. I went to New Hampshire. I was very much welcomed. Like, I know some people won't necessarily like this, but Jeremy Kaufman welcomed me quite heavily. Like, I was refused service at a certain bar because I didn't have my passport. I had my driver's license to prove my age, but I didn't have my passport. And Jeremy Kaufman, he like threw down the fucking towel. He said, "No, we're ending our meal here. We're ending our stay here, and we're not fucking tipping you anything." Like, he was very strongly defending on my behalf. In fact, Nye was there as well. And I really respected that. I really respect that. Like, I felt very much welcomed in New Hampshire. You know, the people, they were good to me.
Yeah, I would definitely love to like be in a community of like-minded people with such different. Yeah, I'd love to see that. And also, as to continue, like in Norway, there's like no skyscrapers. There's like a few like in the big cities, but it's like everywhere is just regular old buildings and yeah. And also, I was just a point on like skyscrapers. There's the government has approved like I think a big like block or like building like is a cube shaped skyscraper I think, and it costs more I think or like almost double the amount of the Burj Khalifa. It's not even that big. Very insane. Like there's a huge documentary on that in Norway, like covering all the massive spending in Norway. Like is a train going out to nowhere costing even more than this, like trillions of Norwegian kroner and such. I think like not trillions. I think like billions, maybe. Yeah, billions. And yeah, I was going to attack the like what you said on not attack it, just comment on the Martian scenario, like you brought up one up. There's so like the aliens are already doing an irrational thing, like threatening you. It's an aggression. So it can't like be a test. I don't think you said that, but it can't be a test for you. Like you since they're already doing something irrational, you don't know what the outcome is. You don't know if they can keep their word. So you might, regardless of what you do, you might get blown up, you might not. Right, okay. So more important point. You might say something about that if you want. But yeah.
You know, I think I've already gone over that, so yeah, continue.
Yeah.
We want to make this like the last point, and then we got to get through some more of these hands, and then.
All right. Sorry. Let's get through like this Kronik's arrow of regression theory. I'm just wondering if you could like share your slides, or maybe also make a dedicated video on it, because it was a lot of yap and tangents on that. I just skimmed it, but also regarding it. You said like there's like the premises of a lot of people is that they think the government solves problems, and that relies on the premise also that they believe in that government is like a real thing that is made of, but it's just made of individuals that are doing the aggression. So really, the more fundamental is like our aggression solving problems, versus you don't need the aggression to solve problems. I maybe phrased that weird. And even more fundamental is like regarding like Zulu's argument, with like do whims and innovation solve problems? It's maybe more fundamental, maybe. Yeah,
you know, I've now asked Chronic if he's willing to share his slides publicly, but thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, let's move on.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Awesome. We'll go to Cosmo, Will, and then we'll get to Jacob and Jose, and then we'll roll things up. So Cosmo, please go ahead.
Okay, so I had a question for Zulu. Why was the first U.S. state you went to New Hampshire? Are you just that libertarian?
No, so the first US state I went to was actually, what the fuck is it goddamn called? I can't remember the name of it.
Massachusetts.
No. It somewhere in that region.
New York.
I can't remember the goddamn name of it. Hold on, let me get a little map. Maps.google.com.
Maine?
No.
Maine? Fucking...
Vermont?
It was Connecticut.
Connecticut.
That's the first state I went to when I was young.
That's even more random than New Hampshire, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, no, I went to Connecticut first. And then next I went to Florida for YALCON. And then after that I went to Massachusetts. And then from Massachusetts we drove up to New Hampshire. So those are the US states. You can cross them off. Those are the US states I went to.
So speaking of fun fact, speaking of Florida, randomly during this space, the Libertarian Party of Florida followed me. So that's like extremely random, but that's quite cool. So Jose has just messaged me saying that he. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I do want to say that Nikola Pavkovic has donated $2 Australian saying he will be making a video with revised presentation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, cool. So Jose has just messaged me saying that he might have to go soon. So I might just let him jump ahead and we'll go to Jose and then we can move on to the rest of the hands. So Jose, please jump in.
All right, let me know. Is my sound coming over good? I don't do spaces much. I'm pretty much a Luddite and I screw up this stuff big time. So is that my sound good? Everything good?
Yeah, your sound's good enough, man. Good enough.
All right, cool. No, dang, the mic keeps cutting the audio for some weird reason. All right, yeah, I just popping in to say what's up. Damn it, do you guys hear me good? The sound keeps cutting off and on. It's weird. Does it sound good still or no? Am I coming over really quiet? Okay,
cool. It's more stable now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, whatever. It just sounds weird on my end, so okay, I'll get over it. Anyways, I was just popping in to shoot the bull. Nothing too serious, so I was just being an idiot. I just happened to get out of the shower and saw you were going. So yeah, wasn't too prepared. I'm honestly a little toasty, to be honest. I normally try to prevent not imbibe any substances at least a couple hours before I do anything like this, but so just shooting the bull. I know you saw some of my stuff. I guess if I was going to do a question, I was more just kind of curious what you guys think, and it's kind of interesting we have Jacob here too, so I know maybe it'd be fun to talk to him, but I don't know. I did want to let you know I was going to leave. I don't want to feel like I'm self-important and need to try to hop in. I had been sitting there like an idiot and didn't understand the hidden systems because I don't really ever do spaces. So I literally was just like, oh, I was waiting to be called up, and then I realized I'm a retard. So, but yeah, I guess my question, Zulu, just what do you think about? I'm just kind of curious what you think about my critiques and stuff, and then maybe be cool to talk to Jacob too, because I haven't really talked to him aside from on the phone. So I'd be interested to hear what he has to say after a little more reflection, I guess. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on some of my critiques, because I know I talked to Ace and stuff. And I know you've seen some of my stuff on Twitter and stuff. So, and I'm coming from a very different perspective from you too. So I think there might be something of interest there. But I'm just curious.
Yeah. So it seems like a lot of your critiques are from sort of the Stern right angle. I reject that because I think it kind of destroys ethics. I don't think it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
sort of. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So I don't think it makes sense to say that. I view it as whim worship, basically, and maybe it might be better to go into that super in depth on like a follow up. Like I could show up on your stream on your show again.
To be clear, I wasn't asking for like an in-depth, like what are your thoughts on egoism. I was just more curious, just kind of my critiques on it, because I don't know. I mean, I guess you don't necessarily have to take that angle, but am I being too much of a dick, I guess? I mean, because like I do feel like I'm kind of, It sounds like people are making out like I'm like upset or like I'm being emotional, but I'm just honestly I'm just more just kind of disgusted by the intellectual dishonesty. Frankly,
Yeah, no,
I don't know. Like,
Referencing the debate,
yeah,
Zulu, just to
yeah,
clarify.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I do agree that your critique of Dave was that he didn't show up to debate. He didn't do a debate, which is true. Like, he didn't actually do anything to advance his side of the resolution. I agree with that entirely, which is what you basically said. I agree with that.
Mm. Yeah, I guess I was more just thinking if I went a little too hard. I also thought it was kind of interesting. I know there's this weird parasocial thing, and I don't know, maybe it was a bit much. I also just felt like I know it seems a little gay because he made it sound like, oh, you're offended for another man. But I guess I've moderated debates before, and I was thinking Jacob's position, and I know I'm somewhat of friends, but it's like in that parasocial sense with Dave. But it's this awkward, weird thing where you're like, we're sort of friends, and so like I kind of get the weird situation you're put in. But I guess my thing, I also was more like, if I was in that situation, I'd be like, dude, what the hell? Like, what? Like, I don't know. That's kind of, I know I'm not necessarily saying Jacob does feel that way, but I guess I more was like, dude, what the heck? Like, it felt almost disrespectful to do that, right? Frankly, like, and I guess maybe I just expect more for Dave because I've been following him long enough, and I just struggle to believe that he's just really not realizing what he's doing. And I don't know, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. I know a lot of you guys talk mad crap about him, so maybe you guys just think he's just that stupid, but I struggle to believe he's just that stupid.
You know, maybe it would be good for Jacob to come in on that, because I don't want to speak for Jacob necessarily.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Jacob,
Maybe
if you
he's
want to jump in at all, please go ahead.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I kind of deconstructed this a little bit last night I did a stream with Fabian, and then I did my own stream afterwards. I didn't like Fabian and I didn't talk about the debate for most of the time. Then we kind of talked about it a little bit at the end. I guess I can always sort of understand what people are saying, even if I don't agree with it. And like, I think I kind of understand what you're saying, Jose, but I think Dave was trying to show up and debate it, and trying to debate the resolution from his point of view, and his basically like, I don't have a standard, but I just know that there's something missing in Zulu's formulation. And I guess like for maybe like you and for others, you're like feeling like, well, Dave shouldn't have accepted to do a debate where he doesn't have like like just showing up and being like, I'm not convinced and I think that's wrong. And my
I mean,
standard
Jacob,
is I just
not to cut you off, but do you think he was prepared at all? Because I also, one thing that bothered me was like a little bit is I heard him name drop that he listened to Zulu's most viewed episode. But he didn't actually listen to the episode that would have given him the most context possible. I know it's 3.5 hours long. Oh my God. But it's kind of like, if you were to show up for the debate, you would think you would at least watch that. And so it's like, I struggle to be like, I don't know. I just find it almost disrespectful, that level of, I mean, not
don't know
even
that he
doing that.
watched the whole.
No, he admitted he didn't
went
in
back
that.
and watched. I think he watched. So when he did a stream with me, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, I think he had only watched like a little bit of it, and I think he did go back and watch more of it. But I still was left with the impression he didn't quite watch the whole thing. But I don't know. Like I didn't ask him that, so I can't say for sure if he.
I think he
watched the
said
whole
he did
thing
in
or
there
not.
that he didn't, but I mean, maybe I imagine that. It was 3.5 hours long, and I'll be honest, I fast forwarded through majority of it because he was just filibustering. So, but nothing was happening. But yeah.
I think there were times where like I think there was times that I was frustrated, but it was kind of like I can understand what Dave was saying, and I could understand what Zulu was saying, and it felt like they were just going in circles. And then I tried to maybe insert myself more than maybe I should have in hindsight, because I thought that I could like just help them to like stop going in circles, and then it didn't work
Well,
because
I think the reason is though it's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
The things I pressed to Dave, it felt like he just didn't like. I was trying to like put it in even terms that he would understand, and it seemed like he didn't quite click with it. And then there was times where I was trying to press to like press Zulu to understand things that Dave was saying more, because I felt like they were not going on the hypotheticals in quite the same fashion and whatnot. And I don't know, like I felt like some ground was made there. And it's one of those things where I feel like maybe there's a difference in expectation, and you can say that like it was wrong or just crappy for Dave to do this, but like I think Zulu showed up to do a very proper, more formal kind of debate following the flow, and Dave did come and more kind of, I guess, like not that I think he was in the conversation and paying attention and responding, but he was uh not like doing a more, I guess, like formal kind of debate point by point, and did take a lot of time to kind of do the sort of, like, I guess you guys would say it's gish galloping. He was doing the more like, like, let's step out of the debate for a little bit and
So
just view this more from like this like zoomed out and talk. And like some of that was like, I don't even mind it for me personally, because like, they agreed to do a debate, but like if I had had my way, a more informal discussion that had elements of a debate was kind of what I would have wanted anyway. But I think everyone else was like, they wanted a debate and they expected a debate, and there's some people who feel like, well, that wasn't a debate, that was more
I,
like
I think there's
just
another
talking.
component. I've listened to Dave for a long time, and one thing that's always irked me, and I thought was kind of just frankly dumb, is he would say like, I approach every debate like as if it's my career's on the line, and I just always took that as like, but if your career's on the line, like, isn't that implying that like you're not going to be intellectually honest here if pressed against the corner, like so that's kind of, I don't know, I understand like to some degree the blood sports of like, I'm here to win and that's that, but to me, I don't know, I don't really care so much about some little whatever, so I'm actually expecting intellectual honesty, I guess, and I just feel like I wasn't getting that like at all. Like maybe it's cognitive
Well, I
dissonance,
think
but I feel like I struggle to
So
believe that he's not there, or
so
whatever.
let
Maybe
me
I don't know.
I don't know.
let me jump on
I
this real
think
quick,
Dave.
Jacob. I'll just jump in on this real quick, because I think Jose's pointing at a concept that both Zulu and I, well, Zulu originally, and then I've also brought up. That, like, look, Dave, it's the old it's the dipshit gambit that Dave runs here, where it's like he just refuses to. This is how I feel about it. He refuses to even acknowledge that his opponent is making a coherent point, and this is something that actually cropped up, I think, yesterday or the day before. So, and again, to be clear, I said this to you, Jacob, in private, and I've said this publicly before on this stage, like earlier today or tonight, wherever you are. That, like, I really appreciate the fact that Dave has started, like, Dave's been getting in these back and forths on X with me. I think it's better than what was happening previously, where like he wouldn't respond, or he just like outright had me blocked at one point. And so he's unblocked me, and now we're getting into these back and forths, which is a progress, I suppose. But as for the actual substance of the back and forths, I had this interaction with Israel, and I felt like, basically what I was pointing at was how I think he takes a pretty NAP absolutist stance as far as Israel, and yet doesn't hold that standard for himself. And that's a very specific claim. Okay, I'm making a very, very specific comparison. I'm saying your stance on Israel is that they should stop occupying Gaza, and it doesn't matter, even if that would have negative consequences for Israelis. Okay, that doesn't matter. That doesn't abrogate their responsibility. That doesn't abrogate the principle that they ought not be aggressing against Palestinians. And that's your stance on Israel. And yet your stance for yourself and your stance on some of the hypotheticals that Zulu poses, or that you pose, is that the principle can be abrogated if the consequences are severe enough in your view. That is I don't know how to be more clear about this. I think that is a very, very specific claim that I'm making. Okay. And yet his only response wasn't to actually address it. His response was being, well, you're being too vague. That's what he comes back with. He just says, you're being too vague. You're not giving me enough concretes. I think that's what he means by that. You're not giving me enough specifics so that I can, that merits an actual response. I was like, well, I'm sorry, but I am being hyper specific. I'm saying you are an NAP absolutist on Israel and not an NAP absolutist on yourself. So this is an inconsistency that you need to reconcile. So, and so what I'm getting at here is, I think that this is what Jose is getting at as far as how Dave interacted with Zulu in the debate, where it's just like this constant, well, you're being too vague, or the claims aren't specific enough, or I can't really respond to this. And I don't know whether it is intellectual dishonesty or whether he just genuinely doesn't get it. Like that's where I'm
I
at.
don't even know that
I'm gonna
that's
play the
what I don't
devil's
know if I would
advocate
agree
here.
with that characterization of what Dave was doing though in that debate. Like I felt like what Dave was doing in that debate was more of a I don't think that you've proven what you've said you've proven. I don't think that and there was times he was like, well, I don't have an objective standard for this. And you're saying you do, but I don't think that's an objective standard. And so like again, I think most of what Dave did was sort of like saying I'm not convinced by Zulu's arguments, and like my counter arguments aren't an objective standard. They're kind of like just, well, we know from intuition that these outcomes
But then that just means
just
he
like
doesn't
on their
actually have an
face
argument
are
against
better.
me.
How is that?
Can I jump
How's
in
that
here
not
real
whim
quick?
worship?
So,
Well,
one of the things I wanted to
you can say it's whim worship. I'm
I
not
just did.
saying
Yeah.
that you can't. Yeah, I'm not saying you can't say that, but like, and here, and I think I can't even remember. I have talked to so many people in the past week that my brain is like mush right
Well,
now.
I guess my thing is like
but
it's just admit it. Like I am a Sternerite. Like I just be like you're a moral subjectivist. Whatever you grapple with that.
I
You
don't think
live in a
that's his
subjective world.
point.
Like
He's pointing out that, like,
well,
let's suppose this. In terms of
Okay, I'm going to just mute everyone here real quick because we are, and this is fine. It's getting lively. This is good stuff. I want to let Zulu jump in because he did want to jump in at one point, and he is the co-host of the space. So Zulu had something you want to jump in on, and then I will let Jose finish, and then we'll go to Jacob, and then Will. I promise we will allow you to get in. So I'm going to unmute now. Zulu, please jump in and go ahead, and then we'll get to everyone. I promise.
Sure. So yeah, no, I was just saying that if it is the case that Dave doesn't actually have any arguments against me, any philosophical arguments, read any arguments against me, then that just is the case, right? He just doesn't have. Then I win. Then I win the debate, just by definition. He doesn't have those arguments. That's what it means to concede a debate, is to say, well, this just seems kind of obvious to me, but I don't have any arguments for it. Okay, then you're just giving a conclusion, and you're saying you don't have any arguments for it. That's what that means to do. So that's why I hold that I won that debate.
Well, and I told you privately, Zulu, because I did debate, like in school, and like, yes, if you are going by the rules of debate, then even though Dave like talked more, and there's times where like rhetorically it seemed like he was doing better, but yeah, like in a strict like looking at the debate in terms of like you provided arguments and Dave. I think there's times where Dave was trying to disprove your arguments, but I don't like. There's a strong case to be made that, like, if you're a debate judge and you're following the flow, then yeah, like, you would 9 out of 10 times a competent debate judge would reward you with the win. I think Dave was showing up and doing less of a debate on the flow and was like doing this sort of like we're debating, but it's also kind of this conversation, and I'm trying to do more than win on the flow. I'm trying to like make a finer point or whatnot. And I think that dissonance is what is rubbing people the wrong way. And I talked to this about with Fabian last night, and we seem to kind of agree that like Dave's point is that like our intuitions are often uh trustworthy when it comes to these things, and that they'll lead us to go that we should check our premises, and we need to figure out like, okay, if it is true that like there is some kind of reason or standard for why in these extenuating circumstances that we would become criminals or do something that seems that it would be against the nap, that like maybe your conclusion is right, but if you don't have the standard or argument that demonstrates that beyond intuition, then you have to just kind of own that. Now you could say, well, I don't have an argument, but like like I still think this is right. And then what, if Dave was a philosopher, or if there's people who are philosophically inclined to agree with Dave's conclusion, they can either try to figure out how to like reconcile that and make an argument, or they can go the route of Jose and say like, I'm an egoist and I just don't think that there's that I think this is all whim worship and just subjective, right? But I think Dave is, and I feel like I'm in this camp too a little bit, where it's like I'm still trying to work. Like I agree with Dave in terms of the intuition, but I think that you're raising solid points to be like, well, on the philosophy, like you're gonna have to explain to me, like if you're saying this is true, you got to justify it. So I guess that's where I'm landing on it, and but I guess I can kind of understand where maybe Jose and you were like, I understand where Jose is coming from, or maybe he feels like Dave was not. I don't know if it's being intellectually dishonest. I think it's just like there were. It was a weird debate because it was a debate, and yet it was it didn't. Dave was not debating in the same way you were debating it. So it's sort of like Dave feels like he showed up and did what he wanted to do and made the points he wanted to make, and you feel like you showed up and argued the resolution and won the debate on the flow. And you know, I'm the one who moderated it, and I still feel the same way as I did before, where I'm like, hey, you're both making good points, and uh, this is stuff that I'm still trying to kind of work out in terms of my own theory, and also bringing in Christian ethics to bear on the whole thing. So, um, but I, but I don't know. I don't. I will also say, and I got to go here in a minute. Can you guys still hear me, by the way? Because I know I
Yeah.
drove through a dead zone
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I
By
got
the
to
way,
go here, but let me. Well, I have to go, so I'm just gonna make like one closing thing and just say that uh like and I said this I think like in a super chat to Zulu on his stream, where it's just like, this is one of those things where like I think I've moderated this was like the third debate I've ever moderated where it was like a real debate. I've done a lot of debates, but not moderated a lot. And it was one of those things where I've seen Zulu do debates and be rather aggressive, and I've seen Dave do that. And I didn't want to have this debate be one of those like everything is super timed and regulated, because I wanted to give both Zulu and Dave that kind of like freedom to interrogate each other. And if Dave's not answering a question that Zulu asked, that Zulu can come in and be like, "Well, you're not answering my question," to Zulu a couple times. And that was the kind of thing I wanted to allow. Um, but I think I think partly because of Zulu's internet, perhaps, and partly because of the fact that it was like 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning on your side. It was one of those things then where like it became lopsided really quickly, and then I felt again like I feel like I then tried to come in and maybe clumsily keep things going in a certain way. But yeah, I guess I just like I don't want to sit here and say I moderated everything perfectly. But yeah, I hope you don't feel like you were like I was in my heart of hearts trying to make as just one of those things where when you do the lack of format, and there were several times where I was trying to like interrupt both of you or and just be like stop, because like there was actually a time, I don't know if you noticed this, where and I can't remember the context. I have to go back and find the timestamp, but I can share it with you. There was a time where Dave gave an answer and I was just so unsatisfied with his answer, and I wanted to stop him and say, well, hold on, you didn't answer Zulu's question. But then that was like one of the few times you did hop in, Zulu, and you're like, no, hold on, I gotta nail him on that. And I think you did a fine job, but it's just one of the things where it is open debates and whatnot. Like it's going by so quickly, and you have this sort of like you want to let people make their points, and you want to give equal speaking time, but also like I don't know that it would have been better if I was just like interrupting Dave every time and just being like, say, hey, you're not answering Zulu's question and start over or something like that.
I will just say, like, I mean, I echoed very similar points earlier on in this podcast. That I don't hold you to account necessarily for bad moderation. Like, I think a lot of the fault is on me for not being aggressive enough. But I will say, one point you brought up there was that I was kind of arguing the debate for the resolution, whereas Dave was arguing it for presumably something else. I I do want to make clear, just to the audience, like, the purpose of a debate is to argue the resolution. It is to prove the resolution in your favor. That's the purpose of a debate. Whether Dave thinks that is the case, it doesn't really matter to me. Because ultimately I did prove the resolution in my favor. So none of whatever Dave says matters if he thinks that a debate is anything other than proving the resolution in his favor.
Yeah, and just on that as well, like Dave said in Jacob in his stream prior to the debate that he was like, okay, we can have this debate. It's going to be pretty blood sporty. Like that was his basic stance on it. Is like, this is what it's going to be. And so, like, if you're going to take that standard, then and we set up there's a resolution that's been set up and everything, then hold yourself to the standard of what constitutes winning or losing a debate. Okay, that's what you have to do. Like, if he wanted it, like, I don't know if Zulu would have agreed to this. I don't want to speak on behalf of Zulu, but he could have asked for an open-ended conversation. Like, if you want to just be, hey, like, let's just have an open-ended dialogue about our positions on this, and like, yeah, we can, have some back and forth where we disagree, but there's no like objective resolution. There's no like winners or losers here.
I do want to just interject here real quick.
Yeah.
This was Dave Smith's resolution, and Jacob can back this up. Dave Smith proposed this resolution for me. Like, we went through many rounds.
We went through like eight different resolutions before we landed on this one.
And as far as I'm aware, this is how I saw it at the time. It was either going to be this resolution or nothing. That's how it was proposed to me. It was like, okay, well, Dave Smith is going to have this resolution or nothing, and I accepted it, and I proved it.
All right, so I mean, to me, that just goes to my point where it's like, okay, if you campaigned for this specific resolution, like this is what it had to be, and this is the only terms under which you're going to debate, then it's like, well, you definitely, I think, are then obligated to stick to it. And I just don't feel like he did. I think Jose's right. I don't think he stuck to the resolution sufficiently over the course of the debate. That's my position, among other things about the debate, but that's one of my positions on it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like there are specific points where I think Dave was offering like at least critiques of Lulu's position that I thought were reasonable. And like sometimes it when you're taking the negative resolution, like sometimes people will say in very formal debates, hey, to win this debate, I don't need to prove anything. All I need to do is just, show that my opponent's arguments like failed to like conclude or something like that, right? But Dave didn't really make that
he didn't do
that kind of framing for his negative resolution. So it's one of those things where like I don't know, like I can kind of understand. I can put myself in the mindset of I guess everyone who's here and they feel like Dave didn't engage like they thought he should have for that style debate, but and maybe in hindsight, it would have been better to have it again. Like maybe it would have been better to have that. I think there was I think Dave was like struggling with like he wanted to do this with Zulu because I had said he should. I think Jose had said he should. Others others online had said he should. But you can judge him for it. But I think there was part of him that just felt he feels strongly that this stuff is just like I guess it's a meme now, like it's just so obvious. So I think he was just kind of struggling to figure out how to and I guess I'm sympathetic to it because I think some of it is a little.
I do want to jump in on that because I do think
I kind of wanted to like
I do think there was a part of Dave which is kind of condescending towards us still. Like he's just like, oh well, I just got to swat away.
What I want to get at.
I just want to
we'll
swat
jump
away
to
with
Jose real quick once Zulu's finished. Jose, you can jump in once Zulu's finished.
I just want to swat away this fly. Like this is just nothing. Like just nothing is going on here. Who even cares about these people? Like he's kind of still keeping on that kind of condescending attitude that I pointed out in the Celebritarian video, and it's emphasized by the fact that he didn't even watch the goddamn video. Right? He never watched the video. He didn't prepare an opening statement. Clearly, he didn't prepare an opening statement. He never responded to my opening statement. And this is why I think he lost the debate. Like, he just fundamentally still is looking down upon us. Like, he hasn't understood that, hey, the Remnant's here and they're following Liquid Zulu now. They're not following Dave Smith anymore. Like, I understand Dave Smith, he gets all these big audiences. He's on all these big platforms. He's going to continue to be on those big platforms. But he's lost the Libertarian Remnant. Like, he needs to really reckon with this fact. Like, it's not going away. I'm not going away anytime soon.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, I can totally buttress that point.
Jose,
Jake,
go ahead. Jose, go ahead.
I got a buttress because this is a crux of what makes me frankly like disgusted by this. Because real quick, Zulu, how old are you?
I am 24.
Okay, I'm a decade older than you. I don't think that really fucking matters. Like that's like. I find this. I have a 16-year-old. I have a 13-year-old. I've been married well over a decade. I've been following Dave for like ever. He is the person who's responsible for making Anarchist or whatever. Like all these things I've supported. He's probably one of the only podcasters I've ever actually financially supported. And we did come to this like sort of, I guess, parasocial friendship relationship at some point. And but at the same time, I'm more interested in the exchange of ideas. Like Dave's cool, but I've also done this game long enough to where you're like, I don't know. I mean, it's like whatever this weird parasocial thing that's going on. I have other things going on, so it's like, it's actually kind of almost like this weird condescending thing where he does this, and it's like, I don't think you realize I'm looking down on you when you do this. Like, it just seems just so gross, kind of, and it's like also being thrown over and over again as an argument and doing all of the legwork. And it's like, that's not a fucking argument. And like, I'm sitting here, especially as an egoist, like someone saying like, I would take the penny. I still love my children. I can still make arguments for all these things. And you're sitting here, you bite the bullet. You bite the bullet. You say you're a moral subjectivist. Like, cause that's like, I'm following the argument and you guys are making coherent arguments. And to me, that's the only escape from that argument is I concede I'm a moral subjectivist because I have nothing to point to here.
I mean, I'm going to just straight up say this. You don't have to concede that you're a moral subjectivist in order to also say, like, you can acknowledge right from wrong, but you can also acknowledge, like, pragmatic trade-offs when they're, like, kind of important. Like, let's take the Second Amendment,
Give me a principle.
All right. It's like hey, I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. Wouldn't the Second Amendment, let's suppose people wanted to use the Second Amendment to
guys. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just letting you know I'm leaving. Sorry. By the way, don't be a dick. I just wanted to make it weird that I'm leaving. But thanks for my time. Sorry, I got to get out of here. My wife's been staring at me judgmentally for a while.
Yeah, you, Jose. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much for coming. But yes, I will say the Second Amendment, if you take that seriously, yes, it doesn't mean you can have nuclear bombs or whatever the hell else. But I don't think we will come back to Will May necessarily in this podcast because we do have other people who want to come in.
Well, so I'm just going to close with one really quick thing, which is that like I can kind of understand how a lot of you guys, just going back over the course of 2 years, have felt like Dave has been condescending, and maybe you felt there were times in that debate where he was being condescending. I will also point out though that he said he's open to doing collaborations in the future, and he's been talking and interacting in the comments more. Like, I think that
but doesn't that contribute to the condescension to some degree? It's like he's giving, like, oh, I'm giving you guys this, like, oh, look at, and then I'll look at all these big things I do. Sorry, I gotta go. Sorry.
Listen, you guys can accuse me of being a fanboy, of just being like, well, Dave's my friend, so I'm just like, I don't know, and whatever. Like, I don't want to sit here and like debate my motives or intentions. I will just say though that like, listen, there are times like in any relationship and friendship where Dave does things or says things and we fight and we argue. Like I was really involved with the Mises caucus, and let me tell you, over the years, there's been plenty of times where I disagreed and fought with Dave and with Mike and with Angela. Like, at one point I called Dave a baby because he was throwing a fit about Twitter posts from Joe Jorgensen, which I didn't like either. But he was like, I can't support her after this. And I was like, dude, like, that's just so weak and stupid. So, like, whatever. All this to say that, like, I think that we have to at least, like, and this isn't even to say that, like, it's excusing it, but, like, it is very hard, I think, for any of us to actually consider how hard it is to remain completely humble and to sort of, like, not lose yourself when you get to a certain level of success and popularity. Like it does change the dynamics. Like I'm sure, like I've noticed it as my platform has just grown a little bit. I'm sure you've noticed it, maybe even a little bit, Zulu, as your platform has grown on YouTube. And it's just like when you start getting more and more attention and more support and more comments and more likes, and even then, it's like I think about how much I have to kind of fight things like audience capture, how much I have to fight like uh when my DMs are flooded with a bunch of people asking me to come on their shows and I go like, well, I had people who let me on
Hello.
their shows when I was first starting out. And so I felt like, I want to give back. But then it's like, oh man, but I have, like you get to this point where you're kind of like, man, I feel like I have to economize my time and I have to consider like what's worth doing and what's not doing. And then I feel like I'm, like, am
You
I
got to
looking
tell that to
down on
Walter
people now
Block, by the
because
way.
I'm
Walter
like,
Block will accept fucking invites from anybody. Like, that guy spends way
well,
too
yeah,
much
and
of his
I think,
time.
but like, right, but like, so my point just being that like, I think Dave through this whole thing has at least conceded that like he is under a lot of pressure. He's under a lot of scrutiny, and yet I have tried to tell him to be like, listen, I get where you're coming from, and I think that like I have just the tiniest window into what your world must be like, just in terms of just the popularity alone, let alone just the sort of arrows that go his way. And so I think it was really big of him to do this and to be open to continuing to do this because I have pushed him to say that like listen, and I said this on my stream with Fabian last night. I was like, we can all sit here and debate philosophy and say who is and isn't a real libertarian, and that's all fine. At the end of the day, we're still all part of the same damn movement, whether you like it or not. And Dave is still the who's out there and is pretty much the one of the biggest, if not the biggest, profile person in our movement. And so it is better. I think we would all agree that we can critique his style. You can say you don't like him. You can say you don't think his comedy's funny, whatever. But at least now, me and others have said, if you want to represent the movement, then again, not with every person and not all the time, but like you should check in with the base. You should hear the criticisms from the people who share your, the ideology in the name of the movement that you're, representing to be when you go on these podcasts and say, I'm a radical libertarian. And I'm like, and so, you know, I'm hoping that this dialogue continues. Um, but I do think it's important. I think what Dave does for the movement, I think what Dave does for the cause of not just libertarianism, but just like anti-war and peace and all that is important. I think he gets immigration wrong. You know, but I I think what you do, Zulu, is also incredibly important, and I think we need the people who are doing the philosophy and the theory. So, um, like a lot of this is going to be like this is it's to use a biblical line, it's iron sharpening iron, and there's going to be times where there's ugliness and it's not perfect and it's not pretty, but my heart is to keep pushing towards like because listen, we're still like Dave said this years ago, and it's a line that I always steal, like we're on a suicide path as a I mean, I'm here in America. I know you're not Zulu, but like, the West, even just broadly speaking, yeah, we're on a suicide path. And philosophy is a big part of how we're going to get out of that. I 100% agree with you there. Um, but we also just need to keep in mind that, like, as much as you need to preach the philosophy, we we also can't really afford to just be like fracturing ourselves to the point where like we elevate the disagreements to too high of a level. And so I'm going to be, I guess, like the annoying person in the middle who's trying to like, you know, probably not perfectly, but at least try to at least make the infighting more productive and push us to at least be, you know, trying to keep our arrows pointed more at the actual enemies, which is the state and the people who are advocating for uh, for the state, and keeping our discussions more fruitful and productive. And I hope that we continue to do that.
For sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to start winding this thing down. Oh, sorry, just quickly, Zulu, and then I'll let you jump in.
yeah,
We
so,
do really have to start winding this thing down
yeah, yeah.
because I got shit to do.
I will say
But yeah,
for
go ahead, Zulu, and then we'll start wrapping up.
as it pertains to winding down, I think Nye should be the last speaker because I want to hear from Nye again. But yeah, so there is also a super chat from Nuclear Mayhem 9238 for another 20 knock. We are not in the same movement as Praggets. Grr. Indeed, that would be basically the thrust of my argument. But yeah, we should probably cap it off there because Jacob won't be able to defend himself at all because we got to wrap this up. So I'll
We're just
cap
going
it
to wrap
off
things
there.
up. So yeah,
Just look at my video for that.
Yeah. So we'll let Nye jump in, and then I do want to hit a couple of these questions that people left that have been sitting here for like a couple of hours now. So we'll get through those quickly after Nye goes, and then that'll be the end of the space. I'm sorry to everyone. I'm sorry. There's a few people that requested, and then I've had to decline or have since left. That's just the reality of spaces. You know, we have to end up at some point, so some people are going to miss out. But yeah, so Nye, go ahead, and then we'll hit these questions, and then that'll wrap us up.
What Dave Smith is a big tree. He grew from libertarian roots. He grew into a big tall tree, and then he spread his branches, and he's taking all the sunlight from this big club, and he's suffocating all the new growth under him. Dave Smith must be cut down, and that is unequivocal.
Not literally, though, of course, just figuratively.
Literally.
So, yeah. Okay, so let me hit a few of these questions. So, Perval asks, is there a way to take the Libertarian Party back from the Praggets? The rest of the party views the Mises Caucus as the radicalization or the radical base, but it is really another flavor of pragmatism. Should we even look at achieving goals through the Libertarian Party? Zulu, any thoughts?
You know, so real quick. Yeah, so we just have to keep doing what I'm doing. Just keep advancing the remnant strategy. Just keep saying the radical message, and then you get there eventually, right? You know, in the Scottish Libertarian Party, the things I was saying are like nonsense when I joined. Nobody would believe them. But now I'm starting to get there actually, like people, because I have achieved a far larger presence than the entire party. In fact, just do what I did. Just keep doing it, and do it well. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, on that real quick, just really, really quick, and then we'll keep it rolling. I said this to Dave, and he actually responded again, and I haven't got back to him. I'm not sure if I will or not. But I said to him, because he like posted some clip of like Fuentes, or maybe it wasn't of Fuentes, but it was about Fuentes and Piers Morgan's debate discussion thing. And I basically said, like, look, Fuentes is a prime example of, look, I'm not claiming that he has a consistent, coherent philosophy. Obviously not. He's a fucking national socialist. Like no one of our camp thinks he has anything remotely considered to be considered a consistent philosophy. But he is a radical. Okay, he doesn't hold to a radical message. He says radical things. And that was my point. I was like, Dave, he gets up on Piers Morgan's platform and stands by calling himself a racist and misogynist and saying that Hitler and Stalin are really, really cool. Again, all those things are horrible. I'm not, just to be explicitly clear here, those things are absolutely horrible, especially the Hitler and Stalin stuff. Like, that is disgusting, disgraceful rhetoric. And I hate that he's confident in saying that. But the fact of the matter is that he gets up there, says something that, like, you know, as far as like people tried to refute me on this, I stand by because I actually, you know, touch grass. Like 99% of people in the world find that absolutely abhorrent that he would say that for anyone to say that Hitler and Stalin are cool. Okay, 99% of people think that's abhorrent, and yet he gets up on that debate and radical and that appeals to the base. It appeals to his base of groypers and national socialists that he gets up there and says that. And that is how he is growing his message, despite the fact that he's saying really fucking unpopular things. And so that's my stance for libertarianism. Like, yeah, get up on this. Well, to be clear, bite the bullets that you need to bite. Don't bite bullets that you don't need to bite. But yeah, do what Ron Paul did. Say, yeah, look, man, the government can't criminalize drugs. Okay, if you're too much of a fucking idiot to inject heroin, then that's on you, buddy. Just don't do it. Okay, so that's our stance, and we're seeing it with Fuentes in a much more horrible and disgraceful manner. But it's a bad thing that he's effective, but it's undeniable that he is.
I do want to just interject.
Yeah.
There was heterodox agnostic 8070 for 20 knock, who said cut down the Dave tree in Minecraft as love, and he did a heart. So thank you very much. And I will just quickly nip out whilst you continue to riff Monhop because I need to take a piss. So I'll be back in a second.
Yeah, for sure. So Christian, and I'll let Zulu also answer this when he gets back, but he says, under the proposed legal principle, wouldn't that mean that the teller is justified in giving the money when directly threatened, but not when the robber threatens to blow up their family since it doesn't impact their means to exclude? That is a very good point. I think this kind of relates to something that's been talked about as far as like human shields. And this is probably actually like kind of a more generalized related concept to that, where it's like, yeah, look, the reality is if someone is like shooting at you, and then they're holding someone like directly in front of them, like actually physically directly in front of them, you are entitled to shoot through that person in order to alleviate the conflict. That is permissible according to libertarian ethics. And yet, a very similar but slightly different scenario where someone is shooting at you and they say, hey, I'll stop shooting at you if you shoot the person standing over there that's not physically in the way. You're not allowed to do that. So despite the fact that, both scenarios would result in you no longer being shot at by this like assailant, you can do one but not the other. Now, why exactly that is, again, I'm trying to grapple with the finer points. Again, this is like, Zulu sent me like his rough guide to this a few days ago, and he's obviously like kind of unveiled it more publicly here. I still haven't fully interrogated it. I'm not willing to like commit to 100% agreeing with it. So sorry for the slightly like wishy-washy response there, but I think that's where it could kind of be like, yeah, look, ultimately, if someone plants a bomb at your house and is like, hey, give me all the money or I'm going to blow up your home, like maybe that isn't covered by this legal standard or this legal principle. Maybe there's some other legal principle that we can get to that does, but I'd face value based off of what Zulu has said. It looks like one is, but the other isn't. But it looks like Zulu is back here, so I'll let him jump in on this. So I'm assuming you're up to date. Like, so Christian's talking about how like you can under this duress principle, like if someone is directly like threatening you, you can empty the thing and give it to them. But if they're threatening like your family nearby, then you can't.
So I think it still applies. So, for instance, if we look back to the bank teller, she's not protecting her own body. She's protecting somebody else's property there. She's protecting the property of, the people who put the money into the bank. So if somebody's threatening your family, well, you're actually allowed to protect the property of others. You're allowed to protect the property of your family, namely their own bodies. So I think it's the same principle here, if I've understood the question correctly.
Shit, sorry. I was muted. I was responding to Zulu there. Sorry, I don't want to go too much of a back and forth because, as I said, for the 15th time, I want to wrap up here. But isn't like a key element, like a necessary element of the duress principle that, like, the whole like, well, if they shoot you, they're going to be able to access the REIT. Like, if that makes sense, like, isn't that like whole access to the property a key element of the duress principle that needs to be
and if I'm standing there and my family's all tied up and everything, and they say, hey, we're gonna rape your family or else we'll shoot you in the head, like, yeah, I can no longer exclude them from my family's property, their bodies, if they shoot me in the head.
I think Monhop is muted again.
Oh, fucking hell. I keep muting myself. Sorry. So I get that, but what if the scenario is there's no direct threat on your life? So no one is pointing a gun at you, no one is threatening you. All that's happened is like some robber has shown up and he's showing you like a live cam feed of your home and like your family's tied up and there's a bomb in the room and he's like, hey, give me all the money or I'm going to, blow up your house. It's like, well, if he does blow up the house, then your exclusion of the property will be maintained. Your family will just be dead. So, like, is that? It doesn't seem like the duress principle covers that hypothetical and allows you to empty the empty the tell like the till or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to deal with that. Let me get back to you on that. As I said, this is like a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a perfectly valid answer at this stage. And my answer would just be like, look, it isn't covered. And basically what you have to like at this stage anyway, it's not covered. And basically what you have to do is, work for a company that's going to be like, hey, like, yeah, if your family is tied up and someone strapped a bomb to their chest, then yeah, you can give them the money. We're not going to have a problem with that. Like that's going to be part of your employment contract or whatever. That's how you solve that in the meantime. But who knows, maybe we can establish some kind of principle. So last
Again,
the
we're being
sorry.
We're being inductive here, right? We're looking at these situations where like, okay, well, does this actually work? Like, does this make sense? I should say, like maybe it doesn't make sense. Like that's what we're doing to get to this principle. To Michael Leibowitz, if he ever watches this, we are being inductive here.
Yeah, he was in the listeners at one point. He never requested to speak. I was expecting him to like come after me because he's like constantly requesting me to debate, and I just keep saying like, no, I'm not interested. So last thing in the jumbotron, and then that will be the end of the space. ANCAP is Tony asks, Zulu, what do you think about the objectivist mirror of socialists? Real socialism has never been tried when they say the same about capitalism. And do you believe that the US really is the bastion of capitalism? It's just that it has a lot of anti-capitalist elements?
So I mean, this is the whole thing with capitalism, the unknown ideal. It's the ideal, but we haven't realized it yet, right? That's the whole point of that book. So this kind of flies in the face of all the objectivists who come in and they say, well, anarchy, it's so ridiculous. It's never been done before. Like, well, fuck off. What are you talking about? It's never been done before. Capitalism has never been done before. So says Ayn Rand. Right? So I just don't buy those arguments on their face. I don't buy them. Like, fuck off. I don't care. I don't care that it hasn't been done yet. It's correct. That's the correct way to do things. That's what I'm claiming. And that it hasn't been done yet says shit all about whether it's the correct way to do things.
Right. It's that old like ad, like the one that I used to constantly bring up, and that I would bring up to any objectivists who tried that argument and be like, okay, yeah, well, look, historically, slavery has been ubiquitous in society. Did that prove that we could never have an anti-slavery society or no slavery? Like, obviously not. Slavery was always wrong. It's just we took a while to figure that out, and then when we did, eventually we were able to get rid of it.
Can I?
Hold on. Well,
we're
maybe
wrapping up.
we're wrapping up.
We're wrapping up. So last point, I did actually, Leibowitz did actually bring that up, and he was like, anarchy is not possible because it's never been done before. And then I just literally posted a screenshot of the front page of Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, and I was like, oh, okay, well, your argument says that capitalism can never be achieved because Ayn Rand said so. Anyway, so listen, thank you to everyone who came on. I'd like to have infinity time to go through every single possible permutation and combination of every single argument and every single position that people are going to take. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of time. I have shit to do. I've got to catch a flight tomorrow, it's now 11:15 here, and all I've done today is wake up, take a shit, have a
1
shower,
a.m.
and
over
then talk
here.
about ethics for 3 hours. What was that? Sorry.
It's 1 a.m. over here, so Will, you've really got to silence yourself.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming on. Any last thoughts, Zulu, or we'll just end it there?
I think it was great. Everybody who came on, even Will. Thank you very much, Will, for coming on. I do appreciate
thank
it.
you,
Zulu. I do appreciate you for coming on, even though I'm kind of chiding you a little bit for maybe, stepping in when I think you maybe shouldn't have. But I do appreciate you coming on. I appreciate everybody who came on. I especially appreciate the people who gave money for me streaming here. It's very much appreciated. And I think this is a very good, positive podcast to have, because we're always going to have that feedback from the Remnant. Like Jacob was saying, you need to have that feedback from the Remnant. We're always going to have that because we're doing these on Twitter Spaces. So people can always come in and, say their piece. So I think that's very positive. And, I think it's a good thing for this to be done. Because, as I keep, this is true, actually, as I keep growing, I become less able to really dig my feet into the dirt, dig my knuckles in, and figure out what is on the ground level. What are the current innovations going on? I don't necessarily know, right? And I try to know. I try to go, okay, well, they're talking about this book right now. Let's see what that book is saying. But it's harder and harder and harder to know as I grow in size, because I'm getting more and more noise from every direction. So I do appreciate this type of event that Monhop has given to us, where I can just hear new arguments, and it's like, okay, well, maybe I have to look into that more, and maybe I have to, develop in this area. And if I keep doing this up into my 60s, well, then I will be able to keep on the frontier of this theory. And that's a very important thing, I think, because I'm now turning into somebody who is actually like a big name in the libertarian space. I'm no longer just this guy off to the side who is philosophizing and figuring out the theory. I am now actually promulgating the theory quite heavily. So I need to stay sharp as possible. So I want to thank everybody for that.
For sure. One last point I forgot to mention, and then that will actually be the end. So yeah, every fortnight, but this is going to be the last episode of the year, because the next episode would be scheduled for the 27th of December, and there's absolutely no chance that I'm going to have the opportunity to host a 3-hour space in the midst of all the festivities of Christmas and New Year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone. And yeah, it should be, would look something like either the 3rd or the 10th of January that the next one of these will go ahead. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, be safe, everyone, and we will catch you next time. Cheers. See ya.
Mile Monhop and Zyle Zulu.
thank you.
Zyle
By the way,
Zulu.
Zulu,
No, nothing else. All right. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody who came along. I think I did hit all those super chats. So thank you very much, everybody who came along, and especially those who super chatted. I'll see you next time. I'm going to be doing a stream tomorrow with Man Sharma and Nikol Pavkovich, responding to Michael Leibowitz's video, kind of attacking me, kind of saying that I'm a rationalist. So we'll be going over that tomorrow, and we'll see how much that stands up to scrutiny. But yeah, I'll see you guys